Chapter 1407. He was afraid that Gu Qingze would open his mouth wide and ask for a second promise. If that happened, he would really spit out blood. Chen Ning's eyes turned and she suddenly understood Gu Qingze's meaning. He wasn't giving her anything she wanted, but he was giving her a chance to get whatever she wanted. This was because she had firmly grasped the weakness of Duke Ning and Zhao Rong Junju. As long as she wanted something, they would definitely give it to her. But she really didn't want anything. What exactly did Gu Qingze want her to take from them? That's right. A light flashed in her mind and she suddenly thought of something. Since Sir Duke is asking, this princess will not be polite. This princess saw that the snow silk robe my master gave to the princess consort was not bad. If the princess is willing to part with it, this princess wants that snow silk robe. She said with a faint smile. What? Snow silk robe? I won't give it, I definitely won't give it. Zhao Rong princess' face fell and she immediately shook her head in rejection. That snow silk robe was a birthday gift from the ancient divine doctor. Not to mention the fact that it was priceless and was invulnerable, the most important thing was that when she walked out wearing it, it was very eye-catching. As long as she told others that this snow silk robe was a gift from the #1 divine doctor in the world, wouldn't those people vomit blood from envy? If she returned to her sect, her senior brothers and sisters would be filled with extreme jealousy towards her. Alright then. Since the princess is unwilling, I can only take back this recipe. I don't dare not listen to master's words. Chen Ning gave an uncaring smile and reached out to take the recipe from Gu Qingze's hand. Zhao Rong princess gave a snort, not caring at all. Who knows if that recipe is real or fake and if it can cure this princess' illness? She muttered in a small voice. However, Chen Ning's ears were very sharp, so she could hear every single word. It seems like the princess still has doubts about this princess' medical skills. Since it's like this princess will tell you about the princess' illness. Chen Ning raised her brows and slowly said, the cause of this strange illness was 3 years ago. At that time, you had a strange illness and almost lost your life, isn't that right? Zhao Rong princess gave a snort. Everyone in the capital city knows about this matter, so what skill do you have? Chen Ning revealed a faint smile and continued to say, at that time, the princess took the elixir and your strange illness was cured. After 3 years it didn't come back, so you thought you were cured. But in reality the strange illness was suppressed by the elixir and could not break out, so it slowly changed. It caused your qi to stagnate and heat to turn into fire, causing your heart fire to overflow and the heat poison in your body. After a long time, it turned into psoriasis and it finally broke out after 3 years. Her string of medical terms caused Zhao Rong Junju and Duke Ning to stare blankly. The two of them did not really understand and only felt that it was unfathomable. It was very similar to the medical terms that the imperial physicians of the Imperial Academy of Medicine often used. The ministers in the hall were also stunned, especially those who knew a little about medicine. They were full of admiration. He couldn't tell that the Empress's medical skills were really amazing. Sure enough, a great teacher produces a great disciple, and a strong general has no weak soldiers. Chapter 1408. Her words were very clear and logical. Not only were the ministers stunned, even Mo Chuan and Gu Qingze were stunned. Especially Mo Chuan. If it wasn't for the fact that he understood her better than anyone else, he really would have thought that she was an experienced divine doctor that could bring people back to life. Gu Qingze looked up at the serious Chen Ning. He felt this was both funny and admirable. The way this last talked about medical knowledge was really intimidating. Even he himself could not make up a lie that was as convincing as hers. This was because the Zhao Rong princess illness was not some psoriasis at all. It was just something he made up to scare people. But other people did not know this. Hearing Chen Ning's words, how could they doubt her medical skills? Even the Duke Ning and the Zhao Rong princess were stunned hearing this. I asked the Empress, how can this illness be cured? Duke Ning's eyes lit up. He was already 100% convinced by Chen Ning's words. Chen Ning said in a very serious voice, to cure this illness you can't use ointment. That can only cure the symptoms and not the root cause. If you want to cure the psoriasis, you have to treat it from the inside and get rid of the heat and evil wind. Only then can it be completely cured. So the medicine I gave the princess only had 2 ingredients. The first was Chinese gold thread and the second was snake skin. Snake? What is a snake? The Zhao Rong princess couldn't help asking. She had heard of Chinese gold thread before, but this snake skin, this was the first time she had heard of it. Chen Ning softly said, snake skin, it's the skin that a snake sheds. What? Snake skin? Zhao Rong Juanju's face darkened. When she thought of that long snake, her throat itched and she almost vomited. Father, I definitely won't eat that disgusting thing. Even if I die, I won't eat it. She forcefully stomped her feet. Qin Ning looked at her. Princess, good medicine is bitter, not to mention the fact that this snake skin is an ingredient. It is the skin of a black-browed snake, so it has scales and a bit of a fishy smell. Snakes are cold creatures and their skin is the coldest of the coldest, which is the bane of the heat in the princess body. As for Chinese gold thread, it has a bitter taste and a cold nature. It has the effect of clearing heat and detoxifying heat. My prescription is to grind Chinese gold thread and snake skin into powder and then drink it with warm wine. As for how much of the snake skin and Chinese gold thread to use, it is all written in this prescription. If you use the wrong amount, it will be harmful. Princess, you need to carefully consider whether you want to use the snow silk garment to exchange for this prescription. However, I don't have much patience and I can't wait too long. If I can't obtain this snow silk garment, I won't care about it. At that time, even if you give it to me with both hands, I might not accept it. She leisurely took the prescription and looked at Zhao Rong with a smile that was not a smile. Zhao Rong Juanju's heart was filled with fire. She couldn't go up or down. She was about to choke to death. She forcefully glared at Qin Ning. Seeing her smiling face, she really wanted to reach out and scratch that damn smiling face to pieces. Duke Ning's eyes were glued to the prescription and he said without any hesitation, Rong, why aren't you taking out the snow silk clothing and giving it to the Empress? In his eyes, there was nothing more precious than this prescription. As long as he obtained this prescription, he would be able to cure Zhao Rong and his strange illness. As long as his illness was cured, what was a trivial snow silk clothing? At that time, wouldn't he be able to have whatever he wanted? Chapter 1409. Father, I won't give it to you. This was given to your daughter by the ancient divine doctor. Your daughter will definitely not give it to someone else. Zhao Rong wanted to say in her heart that she would rather burn this snow silk robe than give it to the little fox spirit that she hated the most. Duke Ning fiercely glared at her. You useless thing. Zhao Rong princess was about to explode with anger. Now even her own father was not helping her and wanted to steal her snow silk robe. Rong, do you want to hold this snow silk robe and have your skin rot to death? If you die, what use is there even if you keep this snow silk robe? Can your life not be compared to a single robe? Duke Ning took a breath and spoke in a slow voice. Zhao Rong princess' heart turned cold. She finally understood that her father was reminding her that there would be a long time in the future and saving her life was the most important thing. In the end, this snow silk robe would still fall into her hands. She finally reluctantly took out the snow silk robe and gave it to Qin Ning. Empress, if your medicine can't cure my illness, you have to return this robe to me. She tightly held onto the snow silk robe, not willing to let go. Qin Ning revealed a faint smile and said, Who do you think this princess is that I would covet your things? Only this robe is my master's beloved item, so I just want to return it to its rightful owner. As for your illness, you just need to put your heart in your stomach. If you take the medicine and it can't cure your illness, I'll compensate you with 2 more snow silk robes. Zhao Rong princess finally let go. Seeing Qin Ning take away the snow silk robe, it was like her heart had been dug out. Because she had not just lost the snow silk robe, she had also lost her face, dignity, and glory. For a moment she really wanted to take it back, but thinking of that itch, she suppressed this thought in her heart. Father was right, there would be a long time in the future. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Vixen, you little b****, just you wait. One day you'll take everything from me and I'll make you spit it all out and give it back to me. Princess, you have to take care of this recipe. If you accidentally drop it, you won't have a second snow silk robe to exchange for this recipe. Qin Ning smiled as she placed the recipe in Zhao Rong princess' hands, casually giving her a small mocking sentence. Many thanks, Empress. Zhao Rong princess held the recipe and stared at Qin Ning. Thinking of the snow silk robe, she felt a heart-wrenching pain, but she still had to thank her. Qin Ning revealed a smile. She turned to Gu Qingze and said, Master, I'll send you to rest. Gu Qingze nodded and suddenly raised his head to look at Duke Ning. Duke Ning, your beloved daughter's illness cannot be delayed. You should go home and take your medicine as soon as possible. Yes. Thank you for your reminder, Divine Dr. Gu. I will bring her back to the residence immediately and get the medicine according to the prescription. Once Duke Ning obtained the recipe, he wished he could grow wings and fly back to his palace. Hearing Gu Qingze's words, he couldn't help it. Many thanks to the Emperor and Empress Dowager for arranging this banquet for Zhao Rong. This minister is filled with gratitude. Only Zhao Rong's illness cannot be delayed, so this minister will take Zhao Rong away first. After Zhao Rong's illness is cured, this minister will enter the palace to thank the emperor and empress dowager. Mo Chuan gave an sound and said, the illness is more important. Duke Ning can return to his palace, this one will not blame you. Everyone can disperse. Chapter 14:10. So the ministers all left the banquet and left the palace. Although all kinds of things had happened in the middle of the banquet and everyone was only half full, the good show they had seen was enough. It was enough for them to lick their tongues after the meal. Duke Ning's face was black as he dragged Zhao Rong Junju, who had lost all face, out of the imperial palace. Zhao Rong turned around and looked in the direction Mo Chuan left in. Her heart was still reluctant to leave. Stupid girl, what are you looking at? Can't you see that the emperor's thoughts are not on you? The more you pester him, the less he likes you. Duke Ning saw that there was no one around and couldn't help reminding his daughter in a low voice. Zhao Rong bit her lips and her eyes filled with tears. Father, you clearly know your daughter's feelings. You promised your daughter that you would make your daughter the empress, but that little fox spirit. Shut up. What kind of place is this? How can you slander the empress? Have you forgotten your own status? What empress is she worthy? She is just a servant, a little slut that Chu Xiaoyang doesn't want. What qualifications does she have to be the empress? She is not worthy of royal cousin at all. She doesn't deserve it, but do you think you do? You've made such a big fool out of yourself today, do you still want to ascend to the empress throne? Stop dreaming. Duke Ning's words were very cruel and ruthless, but he had to say it, otherwise his daughter would not come to her senses. Even if your daughter can't become the empress, I won't let that little fox spirit sit comfortably in that position. Father, you're so capable, you must have a way to help your daughter vent her anger, right? Zhao Rong Junju pulled on Duke Ning's sleeve and raised her face to plead. Duke Ning did not deny it. We'll discuss it when we return. With a wave of his sleeve, he threw Zhao Rong's princess aside. A look of joy flashed on Zhao Rong's face. She knew that her father had agreed. Humph, Qining, Qining, I can't deal with you, but I still have my father. You will soon have a taste of how strong my father's methods are. In the Qingyin palace, all the ministers left in the blink of an eye. Qining also pushed Gu Qingze into the back hall. She knew what Mo Chuan's gaze meant. As expected, as soon as they entered the back hall, they saw Mo Chuan's tall and handsome figure appear in front of them. Gu Qingze frowned and said with displeasure, Little girl Qin, I asked you to find a quiet place for me to rest. What did you bring me here for? Qin Ning revealed a faint smile and said, Master, do you not have anything you want to say to me? No. Master only wants to sleep right now and don't want to talk. Gu Qingze said crossly. Mo Chuan walked forward until he was in front of Gu Qingze. He suddenly gave him a deep bow. What is the emperor doing? Being so polite to this commoner cannot accept this. His attitude towards Mo Chuan had always been lukewarm, not salty, not light. He would often mock and ridicule him. Mo Chuan was already used to his tone. In the past he would be angry and annoyed, but now his heart was completely calm. Mo Chuan was already used to his tone. Before he would be angry and annoyed, but now his heart was completely calm. Divine Dr. Gu, thank you for everything you've done today. He stood up and sincerely thanked Gu Qingze. What did I do? Gu Qingze asked. Chapter 14:11. Gu Qingze gave a snort and turned his head away. He said in a cold voice, None of the things I've done have been for you, I don't need you to thank me. He had an unapproachable look on his face. Mo Chuan was not angry and continued to say with a faint smile, No matter what, I have benefited greatly. You cured my mother's illness and cured her old illness, I am filled with endless gratitude. Also you helped Ning vent her anger. Wait a minute, I helped that Qin girl vent her anger, not for you. I just don't like people bullying my disciple. She is my disciple, so only I can bully her. Outsiders want to bully my Gu Qingze's disciple, so it's already polite of me not to skin her. You better tell that princess cousin of yours that if she dares to provoke my disciple again, I won't be this polite anymore. If it was before, Mo Chuan would have been filled with jealousy when he heard this, but now his heart was calm. Not only was he not angry, he even had a smile on his face. Your disciple is also my wife, so there is nothing wrong with me thanking the divine doctor, right? He said with a smile. Gu Qingze looked at him like this was the first time he had met him. He suddenly had a feeling that he could not see through this young emperor. He had an indescribable pride in front of Mo Chuan in the past, but now he suddenly felt that the other side was not as weak as he had imagined, nor was he as useless as he had imagined. He was like a needle wrapped in cotton. Normally he did not show his sharpness, and as long as you did not use strength to hold it, you would not feel any harm. But if you use strength, then you would just be asking for trouble. Speak, you had that Chin girl bring me here. Other than thanking me, what else do you want to say? If you have something to say, say it quickly. After you're done, father still needs to go to sleep. In order to hide the faint unease in his heart, Gu Qingze deliberately spoke in a rough voice. It's not that I have something to say, it's that she has something to say to you. Mo Chuan revealed a faint smile. He looked at Qin Ning with deep meaning before turning around. His yellow robe fluttered in the wind as he left the palace, leaving Qin Ning and Gu Qingze alone in the back palace. What does he mean by this? Gu Qingze looked at Mo Chuan's leaving back with a stunned expression, not daring to believe that he would just leave like this. Didn't this fellow always treat her as a love rival? Whenever he saw her alone with Shin Lass, he would act as if she was going to steal his woman away. His feeling was not wrong, he indeed had this idea. Gu Qingze rubbed his nose and looked at Qin Ning. Thinking about how she had agreed to go to the godly Dr. Valley with him to study medicine for a year, he suddenly felt a little guilty towards Mo Chuan. It was because of this guilt that he wrote the prescription for Empress Dowager Zhou today. It was to help Empress Dowager Zhou adjust her body and ease the pain. It was because of this guilt that he wrote the prescription for Empress Zhou. Shin girl, what do you want to say to me? Qin Ning smiled. Of course it's to thank master. There's no need to thank me. I just can't bear to see anyone bully you. In the future, if anyone dares to find trouble with you again, just tell me. If they bully my Gu Qingze's disciple, do they still put me in their eyes? Chapter 14:12. Right now the news of her being accepted as the world's #1 godly doctor's disciple had spread throughout the capital. Gu Qingze's name was known throughout the world. No matter where he went, he would cause a stir. Looking at the 4 countries, he probably didn't have a single enemy. Because people ate all sorts of food, it was hard to avoid getting sick. Even if they didn't get sick, their family and relatives would get sick one day. Everyone had to beg Gu Qingze, so no one dared to offend him and no one dared to offend him. Everyone wanted to curry favor with him when they saw him. Today at the Anqing Palace Hall, he was like the moon surrounded by the stars, which was evident. The so-called a person's name was like a tree's shadow. Going out with the name of the godly doctor's disciple was like carrying a treasured sword. No matter where she went, she would be unimpeded and no one would dare make things difficult for her. Perhaps if this matter was passed to the Purple Heaven Pavilion, they would have to weigh the severity of this matter. She never thought that Gu Qingze would have such a deep plan for her. Understanding this point, Qin Ning's gratitude towards Gu Qingze increased by another level. Master, she called out. Her voice was a bit choked up. Even with her sharp tongue, she didn't know what words to use to express her gratitude. Because no matter what words she used, they would all become useless. Gu Qingze rolled his eyes at her. If you want to thank me, then don't say any nonsense. Hurry up and find a place for your master to sleep, I'm tired to death. He gave a large yawn after saying this. Qin Ning revealed a faint smile. She gently pushed against the wall and opened a secret door. Then she pushed Gu Qingze inside. Behind the secret door was a quiet room. It was spacious and quiet. There was a bed, a couch, a table, and a chair. There was even a pot of fragrant tea on the table. Master, you can rest here. If there's anything you need, just pull this rope and someone from the palace will come in to serve you. I'm someone from a rural village, so I'm used to being free. I don't need anyone to serve me, unlike you who were born with a golden spoon in your mouth. Everything is at your fingertips and food is at your fingertips. Your master can't enjoy this kind of fortune. Gu Qingze curled his lips and said in a sarcastic manner. Qin Ning was stunned. She felt like his words were mocking her and Mo Chuan, but thinking about it, it wasn't like it. It was more like he was mocking himself. She suddenly thought of her master's background in the rumors. If that legend was true, then her master should also be considered a golden branch and jade leaf. However, he didn't even get to see his biological father. From the day he was born, he was abandoned, and his mother committed suicide in front of his biological father's door. A few days after he was born, he was thrown into the moat when he was still an infant. If it wasn't for his great fortune, the little baby back then would have drowned long ago, and there wouldn't be the current Gu Qingze with godly medical skills. How did he manage to survive all these years? She looked at Gu Qingze with an indescribable feeling in her heart. However, she knew that Gu Qingze was proud and conceited. He had never spoken a word about his past, and she was not familiar with him to the point where she could tell him everything. Even if she asked, he wouldn't tell her a single word. What's more, everyone has their own sorrows and unspeakable emotions. Just like him, didn't he have a lot of secrets? All right. Master, you can rest now. I'll be going out first. Chapter 14:13. Master, this item will be returned to its owner, she said with a smile. Gu Qingze looked down and his brows knit together. Snow silk clothes? What do you mean by this? The snow silk clothes are Master's treasure. I don't want this good treasure to fall into the hands of that bad princess. Qin Ning smiled as she blinked her eyes. Gu Qingze gave a snort and looked at Qin Ning. What, you don't plan on burning it? Qin Ning's face couldn't help turning a little red. She never thought that her subtle thoughts would be seen through by Gu Qingze. However, she didn't care about it and simply admitted, yes, I originally wanted to burn it. When I saw that Master actually gave the snow silk robe that you gave to me to that bad princess, I was really angry. I was angry that I had a fake master who didn't give such a good thing to my disciple but to my disciple's enemy. Later, I saw such a wonderful play and realized Master's ingenious design, so of course I wasn't angry at Master. It's just that I couldn't bear to see such a good thing being taken away by that bad princess, so I took it back from her and returned it to its original owner. Master, keep it safe. If you give it away again, your disciple might not be able to take it back for you. Gu Qingze stared at her. You little girl, do you think I don't know what you're planning? Things that are given out are like water that has been thrown out. How can you take it back? Not to mention that this is the reward you received from the Zhao Rong princess. It wasn't given to you by me. It has nothing to do with me at all. If you don't like it being worn by someone, then you can just burn it. He threw the clothes back into Qin Ning's arms, not even looking at it. Qin Ning stuck out her tongue and said with a smile, Master, tell your disciple, does that bad princess really have psoriasis? I've never heard of this disease before. Could it be that Master did something to this clothes? Gu Qingze turned the mechanism and turned the chair into a couch. Then he comfortably laid down and softly said, You already know the answer. The world only knows that Master's medical skills are amazing, but I never thought that Master's methods of treating people would be even more amazing. I really can't compare. Master, what did you put on the clothes? How did the Zhao Rong princess stop itching after rubbing against the old locust tree? Did Master also do something to the tree? Qin Ning asked the question she had been suppressing in her heart for a long time. Gu Qingze closed his eyes. It's not anything amazing, it's just some itching powder. I didn't do anything to the tree. The old locust tree's bark has the effect of relieving itching. I didn't lie to her about this. Then her body will be covered in rashes, fish scales, and her scales and her skin will slowly rot. Is that true? Of it? Gu Qingze said without any hesitation. Qin Ning revealed a smile. I never thought that Master's ability to deceive people would be #1 in the world. Even I almost believed your words. Zhao said, Chen said, Qin, you Qinli's back. The prescription you gave to that Zhao Rong Junju snake slew gold thread, you made it sound so real. That gold thread is extremely bitter, and the snake slew is salty and fishy. It must have been hard on her to have her eat these two things for a month. Chapter 14:14. Gu Qingze found this funny and angry. Zhao Rong princess offending you is really unlucky. She shouldn't have done this. She shouldn't have been blind and offended my master's disciple. She smiled and said, Master, you have to take care of these clothes for me. Take care of what? Gu Qingze stared at her. The itching powder on it. Does Master want me to be like Zhao Rong princess and make a fool of myself while hugging the old locust tree? Gu Qingze threw a bottle of medicine into her arms without even thinking. Sprinkle this on the clothes. Qin Ning smiled as she sprinkled the powder on the snow silk clothes. In her heart, she was thinking that her master's thoughts were really strange. He clearly wanted to give this clothes to her, but then he took it back and gave it to Zhao Rong princess. Then he deliberately gave her a prescription and made a request so that she could take it back from Zhao Rong princess. He had spent so much effort and made this snow silk clothes go around in a big circle, but it still ended up in her hands. But he did not admit that it was given to her, insisting that she had exchanged the prescription for it. She did not understand the reason, but it did not affect her gratitude towards Gu Qingze. After taking care of the snow silk clothes, she thought about how Zhao Rong princess had gone for wool and lost rice. She wanted to use the catnip to harm her, but she never thought that she would fall for Gu Qingze's trick and be covered in itching powder. She found it very funny. Take your clothes and leave, quickly leave. Your master needs to rest. Gu Qingze revealed an impatient expression as he waved his hand to drive them away. Qin Ning smiled and suddenly thought of something. She couldn't help looking back and asking, That's right, master, I think that Duke Ning's attitude today was a bit strange. It seems like he was even more worried about that prescription than Zhao Rong princess. What kind of reasoning is this? Could it be that he has the same illness as Zhao Rong Princess? But that skin rash was clearly something you made up to deceive people. Gu Qing's brows jumped up, but he did not say a word. Master, you said that Duke Ning had a strange illness. Could it be that the person with the skin rash was not Zhao Rong Princess, but rather him? Qin Ning's heart skipped a beat and she blurted out. There was no expression on Gu Qing's face and he still did not say a word. That's right, it must be like this. That's why he was even more worried than Zhao Rong Princess and why he would agree to Master's request. He was not doing this for his daughter but rather for himself. That old fox is truly sly. Although I thought he was evil, he was still a father to his daughter. I didn't think that he would be this kind. I didn't think. Qin Ning stomped her foot and thought of the performance that Duke Ning had put on in front of everyone. She had not seen through it at the time, but now that she thought about it, it was all fake and she couldn't help feeling disgusted. Gu Qingze said faintly, he's no different from a beast to begin with. Qin Ning nodded, humph, he thinks that he can cure his illness with that prescription, he's dreaming. I made up that prescription to punish Zhao Rong Junju. So. Then Master, are you sure that he is suffering from psoriasis? Is there really such a strange disease in this world? Qin Ning asked in a curious voice. Chapter 14-15. Then Master, will you cure him? Qin Ning blinked her eyes. Gu Qingze gave a snort. Who is he to me? Why do I need to cure him? Do I owe him? Qin Ning stuck out her tongue. He owes Master a promise. I think Master must have a wish that needs him to fulfill. If he dies like this, wouldn't Master's promise be for nothing? Relax, I will definitely make him fulfill his promise before he dies. Gu Qingze gritted his teeth and said word for word. His fingers on the armrest unknowingly tightened and his knuckles popped out, but he did not notice it at all. Qin Ning saw his reaction and her heart was filled with wonder. She couldn't help asking, Master, have you seen Duke Ning before? Of course not. Gu Qingze shook his head. But I feel like Master hates him a lot, like you have a grudge with him from a previous life. Although Gu Qingze's eyes were closed, Qin Ning still noticed his body language. His limbs were tense, his face was tense and the veins on the back of his hands were popping out. This was a sign that he was desperately suppressing the anger in his heart. But thinking back to when Gu Qingze and Duke Ning met, it was clearly the first time they met, so there was no mistake about this. Perhaps he owed me in his previous life, so I'm here to collect my debt from him in this life. Gu Qingze suddenly revealed a smile, but that smile on his handsome face was very strange, making Qin Ning's heart skip a beat. Master. She muttered as if she had thought of something. You little girl, what nonsense are you spouting here? Get out, quickly get out for me. Gu Qingze suddenly opened his eyes and actually lost his temper. Without saying anything else, he pressed the mechanism and the black chain flew out, wrapping around Qin Ning and accurately sending her out of the secret door. The black chain flew back with a schwa sound and the secret door closed with a pung sound. It was unknown when Mo Chuan had returned to the back hall. Seeing this, he flew over and supported Qin Ning. He anxiously asked, Ning, what's wrong? Qin Ning shook her head and said, It's nothing, I asked something I shouldn't have asked. Master lost his temper and kicked me out. She tilted her head and smiled. My master's temper is really bad. This is already the second time he's chased me away. He's really lashing out at the slightest disagreement. It seems like I really have to work hard to learn martial arts from you. That way the next time Master gets angry and chases me away, I can at least avoid him. Mo Chuan pinched her nose in a funny and angry manner. Now you know you need to work hard? Very good, from now on you can practice martial arts with me every day. He thought, no. Oh, how about this, if you don't want to be his disciple, you can continue to make him angry. Who knows, he might expel you in a fit of anger, he added. Mo. Qin couldn't help laughing. Mo Chuan, you. Come, let's go back. Don't disturb my master's rest. She pulled Mo Chuan's hand and softened her steps. The two of them walked side by side. What she did not know was that after she and Mo Chuan left for a long time, Gu Qingze was still lying on the couch. His eyes were wide open as he expressionlessly looked at the carved beams above his head. His thoughts had floated to who knew where and no one knew what he was thinking. Chapter 14-16. Mo Chuan and Qin Ning returned to the Guanyu Palace. Xiao Ru had already prepared some fragrant soup for Qin Ning to bathe in. Young miss, this servant has prepared some water, so you should take a bath. This servant is worried that the catmint smell is still there. Also, you drank that wine with the thorn mustard grass, what if it attracted the cat? Also, this servant will quickly burn the clothes you're wearing. Xiao Ru anxiously said. Chen Ning couldn't bear to reject her good intentions, so she nodded with a smile and walked into the bathroom. Xiao Ru was about to follow when Emo Chuan called out to her. Stop. Xiao Ru quickly turned around and carefully said, This servant is here. She still had a kind of respect for Emo Chuan from the bottom of her heart. She always lowered her head in front of Emo Chuan, not daring to take a deep breath. It was like Emo Chuan was a tiger that could eat her at any moment. Especially when Chen Ning wasn't by her side, she was even more worried. Emo Chuan saw her shrinking back like a quail and muttered in his heart. He had a gentle attitude towards her, but why was it that every time this girl saw him, it was like she was looking at a monster? If Ning saw this, she would definitely think that he was bullying her girl again. He cleared his throat and asked in a gentle voice, What is that catmint thing? And what is the thorn mustard grass? When Xiao Ru heard this, the flames in her heart began to burn. The uneasiness and fear she felt towards Emo Chuan all flew away. She looked up with wide eyes and angrily said, Emperor, you still don't know about this? That's right, you didn't come back last night, so of course you don't know. Last night, the young miss and this servant were together, and this servant heard the cries of a wild cat outside the window. It was a very strange cry, and this servant was very afraid. The young miss comforted this servant that it was fine and that cats were normal in spring, but this servant's heart was very anxious. When this servant opened the suitcase this morning to pick out clothes for the young miss, I found a brand new beautiful dress like the moon. A dress like the moon. Emo Chuan's lips twitched and he almost broke out in laughter. This girl really needed to find a teacher for her to read a few books. Looking at her use of adjectives, it really was hard to describe. He gave a cough and calmly asked, And then? Xiao Ru began to blabber on, just like pouring beans out of a bamboo tube. She told everything that had happened. After she finished, she thought for a bit and added, The young miss said that she had already used peppermint powder to get rid of the smell of the catnip, but today in the Inqing Palace, when the Zhao Rong princess came to toast the young miss, she pretended to be unsteady and had the young miss help her up. This servant clearly saw that she had sprinkled some powder into the young miss wine, so it must be the thorn mustard powder that the young miss was talking about, so this servant has been very worried. Emperor, if you don't have any other orders, this servant will go and burn the clothes that the young miss was wearing, to prevent the Zhao Rong princess from harming people again. After Emo Chuan heard this, Ning Chuan used Chuan show Ning's heart, he Chuan zi. His hands were clenched into fists and his face was expressionless, but the coldness coming from his eyes was enough to freeze all of Guan Osprey Palace. Xiao Ru shivered from the cold air. Xiao Ru was Xiao cold. Xiao Ning. Chapter 14-17. Xiao Ru's neck shrank. Seeing that Emo Chuan was not saying a word, she tiptoed over to the washroom. Opening the door, she quickly went in and patted her chest, feeling like she could finally breathe again. Emo Chuan never would have thought that Zhao Rong would have this kind of evil plan behind his back. It seemed like he had been too lenient with her. If it wasn't for Ning discovering this flaw, the result in the main hall today would have been unimaginable. He had always thought that Zhao Rong was young and willful. Her actions were because she was used to being arrogant, which was why she was so arrogant, making people feel disgusted. He never thought that her thoughts would be this evil. Not only did she hire someone to kill, she even thought of this kind of evil method. It was simply outrageous. Very good, Zhao Rong princess had tried to steal a chicken but ended up losing the rice used to lure it. She had lost face in front of so many eyes and made a fool of herself. She would never have the face to enter the palace again. Mother would not have an excuse to force him to take Zhao Rong as his concubine. As for Zhao Rong princess, Emo Chuan gave a cold smile. He had already thought of a way to deal with her. It wasn't that he didn't care about their sibling relationship, but rather Zhao Rong's actions had touched his bottom line and touched his reverse scale. He would not allow anyone to harm his most beloved woman at all. He definitely would not allow it. Zhui Feng, he said in a cold voice. This subordinate is here. Zhui Feng appeared out of nowhere and appeared in front of Emo Chuan with a dusty appearance. Go and do something for this one. Come closer to me. Emo Chuan whispered a few orders into Zhui Feng's ear. Zhui Feng's face fell. His usually calm face revealed a shocked expression, thinking that he had heard wrong. Emperor, your meaning is? He asked in an uncertain voice. Follow this one's orders. Emo Chuan coldly said. But. Zhui Feng's forehead was covered in sweat. He stuttered as he said, This is not a small matter. Can the emperor think twice before acting? He thought that the emperor was truly angry this time, otherwise he would not have given him this kind of order. It wasn't that he wanted to disobey, but if this matter was done, the implications would be too big. Mo Chuan's face sunk as he said, "Are you the master or is this one the master? When was it your turn to criticize this one's actions? Zhui Feng, do you still want your head?" Zhui Feng knelt down on one knee and boldly said, "Emperor, if this matter is known by the Empress Dowager, the consequences would be very serious." Mo Chuan coldly looked at him and said, "Very good, Zhui Feng, your courage is becoming bigger and bigger, even daring to disobey this one's orders. It seems like this one has spoiled you too much these years." His tone became heavier and heavier, making Zhui Feng break out in a cold sweat. He quickly said, "This subordinate does not dare, this subordinate does not dare." His voice became heavier and Zhui Feng heard this and Feng as. Zhui Feng's back was covered in a cold sweat. He knew that Mo Chuan was determined this time and would not let Zhao Rong princess go. This Zhao, this one. This. Of the. I. The habit of being a secret guard for many years was that he had to listen to his master's orders. Zhui Feng gritted his teeth as he agreed. "Emperor, do you want master to bring the proof back?" he asked in a trembling voice. Chapter 14:18. Zhui Feng's body couldn't help trembling. Mo Chuan paused and then said, "For the sake of Duke Ning and her dead mother, you have to act quickly, don't let her feel any pain. Also, leave her corpse intact. This matter must be done in secret. You can't let anyone know that it was you who did it and you can't let anyone see your whereabouts. If the Empress Dowager hears this one will hold you responsible." His voice was very strict. "Yes. This subordinate understands." Zhui Feng's face turned serious and his body swayed, disappearing without a trace. Mo Chuan looked in the direction Zhui Feng left in and a complicated look flashed on his face. His heart was filled with guilt towards Empress Dowager Zhou. But he definitely could not continue to tolerate Zhao Rong. In fact, he had already given Zhao Rong several chances, but Zhao Rong did not change at all. Rather, she became even worse, becoming even more ruthless. He knew that once Zhui Feng left, it would be hard for Zhao Rong to survive. According to what he knew, the guards of Duke Ning's palace did not have any strong martial arts experts. With Zhui Feng's skills, it would be easy for him to avoid the guards of Duke Ning's palace, and Zhao Rong's martial arts were not worth mentioning. He was not worried that Zhui Feng would not be able to complete his mission, but rather that Empress Dowager Zhou would not be too sad after hearing this news. It was a good thing that Gu Qingze was still in the palace. With him taking care of his mother's body, he could be assured. Mo Chuan was silently thinking when he suddenly heard Qin Ning's voice from behind him. "What are you thinking about? Why are you so lost in thought?" He turned around and saw that her crow feather hair was still wet, making her face look like a snow-white lotus that had just come out of the water. It was crystal clear and her translucent skin had a faint jade-like luster as she looked at him in thought. He was lost in thought and did not even notice when she came out. Mo Chuan smiled as he came forward to grab her hand. "Why didn't you dry your hair before coming out? It's easy for you to catch a cold like this." Qin Ning did not reply. Her black and white eyes looked at him without blinking, making his heart skip a beat. "What are your eyes staring so wide for? Come, I'll carry you back to your room." He pretended to casually reach out and picked her up, walking to their room with large steps. After entering the room, he walked in front of the bed and gently placed her down on the soft bed. Xiaoru had already made the bed very thick and soft. There was a red embroidered quilt on it that was embroidered with mandarin ducks. The embroidery was very exquisite, making the mandarin ducks look very lifelike. Mo Chuan never liked red, always feeling that this color was gaudy and vulgar. He also felt that pictures of mandarin ducks were vulgar, but he didn't know why. Under the light of the candlelight, he felt that this red mandarin duck brocade was filled with an indescribable joy, making his mood brighten up. Xiao Xiao is really becoming more and more considerate. Ning Ning's Feng's heart. Xiaoru Xiao Xiao Chen's phone. Qin Ti and Xiao Xiao Qin Ti. Shout help but Xiao 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 Qin, TTT. Mo Chuan's heart skipped a beat. With a wave of his sleeve, a gust of wind flew out and the two doors closed with a bang. There were two small clusters of flames burning in his eyes. That scorching gaze almost melted her. Chapter 14:19. Mo Chuan, did you send Zhui Feng to kill Zhao Rong princess? When he was prepared to lean over and kiss her, Qin Ning suddenly spoke up. Mo Chuan's body slightly trembled, but he did not say a word. He slowly let go of her hand and a dark cloud suddenly flashed in his heart. His heart was filled with mixed feelings and he couldn't describe what he was feeling. With Zhao Rong's actions, it wouldn't be a pity even if she died 10,000 times. But when he thought of her mother and Empress Dowager Zhou's relationship and how her father Duke Ning supported Empress Dowager Zhou in the past, supporting him to ascend the throne, he was filled with contradictions. Zhao Rong's crimes were indeed unforgivable, but no matter what, considering the relationship between Empress Dowager Zhou and Duke Ning, he should give her a path to live. But for her safety he still made his decision and gave Zhui Feng a death order. Ning, this matter has nothing to do with you. Zhao Rong only has herself to blame. If she didn't keep trying to harm you, I wouldn't have thought of this. Mo Chuan knew he couldn't hide it from her, so he admitted it. AI. Qin Ning closed her eyes and gave a faint sigh. When she was wearing her clothes in the room, she could vaguely hear the sounds of people talking in the yard. So she looked out the window and saw Mo Chuan and Zhui Feng talking. The two of them were speaking in low whispers, so she couldn't hear a single word. But she could see the cold look in Mo Chuan's eyes and Zhui Feng's frightened expression. She was very smart and could guess most of it after thinking about it for a bit. In this kind of situation, how could she still have the heart to be intimate with Mo Chuan? Mo Chuan, when you gave Zhui Feng this order, did you think of the consequences? She looked up and looked at Mo Chuan with disapproval. Consequences? I don't care about the consequences, I only know that as long as she dies, there won't be anyone chasing after you in this world and there won't be anyone who will use this kind of sinister scheme to harm you. Ning, you don't need to plead for her, you've never been this kind of woman. How Zhao Rong treats you, you know it better than me. Mo Chuan looked at her and said word for word, Ning, people don't need me and I won't offend them. Zhao Rong, this time I can't bear it anymore. You can't bear it anymore? Mo Chuan, don't forget that you are the ruler of a country, you have to bear what normal people can't bear. Ning, what do you mean? You don't agree with what I did? Qin Ning nodded, of course I don't agree. There are 100 good ways to deal with Zhao Rong, but you chose the worst one. Ning, Zhao Rong, what Ning said, Ning said Ning. But what do you think will happen if something really happens to Zhao Rong? There won't be any consequences. I have already told Zhui Feng to not leave a single trace and not let anyone see his tracks. I believe in Zhui Feng's skills, he can definitely do it, so no one will know that this matter is related to me. Mother will not know and Duke Ning will not know. Chapter 1420. There shouldn't be a lot of people in the world that can do this, right? And among these few people, how many of them have grudges with Zhao Rong Princess and are in the capital city right now? Now that I think about it, the identity of the murderer should be obvious. After Qin Ning said this, Mo Chuan was stunned. He had thought that Zhui Feng would not have any clues, but he never thought that this clue would be the most obvious clue. Damn. Why didn't I think of this earlier? Wait a minute, I'll immediately send people to bring Zhui Feng back. I hope it's not too late, I hope Zhui Feng hasn't made a move yet. Mo Chuan's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly stood up and prepared to summon the hidden guards. He finally realized that he had made a very serious mistake. Qin Ning was right, if Zhao Rong was really killed by Zhui Feng, the first person everyone would suspect would not be him, but rather her. Mo Chuan, don't be in a rush to summon Zhui Feng. I think Zhui Feng won't succeed and Zhao Rong should be fine. She pulled his hand. Why are you so sure? You don't know, but Zhui Feng is very familiar with the Duke Ning Palace. There are no experts in the Duke Ning Palace that can compare to Zhui Feng, so with Zhui Feng's martial arts, it would be easy for him to sneak into the Duke Ning Palace and Zhao Rong is not his match. We can't let anyone else know of this matter. I'll immediately go to the Duke Ning Palace and personally find Zhui Feng. Mo Chuan was filled with regret the more he thought about it. He was filled with anger and actually made this kind of reckless decision. He had to stop Zhui Feng before he made a move. Alright, if you're not assured then go take a look. But I think that Zhui Feng will come to report to you soon. Qin Ning shrugged her shoulders. Ning, obediently wait for me here. I'll be back soon. Although Qin Ning said it like she was confident, Mo Chuan was still not assured. He took off his dragon robe and changed into a set of dark clothes. Then he took out a mask and put it on. His actions were very clean and in the blink of an eye, he turned from a young emperor to a cold-faced black-clothed killer. Mo Chuan, be careful. Qin Ning looked at his expressionless face with the mask on and her heart filled with warmth. His black-clothed appearance with the mask was very familiar to her. It was much more intimate than the floating dragon robe and the High Emperor. Mo Chuan nodded. He opened the window and flew to the roof, disappearing into the night in a short while. Qin Ning looked at the stars outside the window and couldn't help giving a sigh. She knew that Emo Chuan would not be in any danger this time and Zhui Feng would not harm Zhao Rong Princess, so she was confident. Because Zhao Rong Junju was a guest of Purple Cloud Pavilion, this time Xiao Ru was captured by Purple Cloud Pavilion's assassins and locked in Duke Ning's mansion. This meant that Purple Cloud Pavilion's assassins were hiding in Duke Ning's mansion. Even if that assassin was poisoned by his bone-melting pill and lost all of his power, his companions could not be underestimated. Even if they were no match for Zhui Feng, they would not be much weaker than him. If Zhui Feng wanted to be, he wouldn't be. Chapter 1421. Qin Ning knew that as long as Zhao Rong Princess still had one breath left, she would not rest until she was dead. Emo Chuan really couldn't bear it. His heart was placed on her and she was deeply grateful for this, but the person Zhao Rong Princess wanted to deal with was her, not Emo Chuan. No matter what, she couldn't let Emo Chuan be involved in this matter. Dealing with the Zhao Rong Princess, she was like what she said to Emo Chuan. She had many methods, but killing people was the worst one. Since Zhao Rong Princess wanted her to die and wanted to ascend to the Empress throne, then she might as well slowly play this game with her. As she expected, after a while, Emo Chuan's dark-clothed figure floated down from the window like a leaf, appearing in front of her. Zhao Rong is fine. Zhui Feng didn't make a move, right? Emo Chuan was wearing a human skin mask and Qin Ning couldn't see his expression, but she was smart enough to guess it. Ning, you're right. Zhao Rong is fine right now because Zhui Feng was discovered when he came close to Zhao Rong's little building. I told him that he couldn't be discovered no matter what, so he could only come back. I let him rest. Emo Chuan took off his mask and his dark-clothed, letting out a sigh of relief in his heart. It was a good thing he didn't make a big mistake. His impulsive actions could have caused a large wave. Qin Ning nodded and revealed a faint smile. Emo Chuan, you don't need to worry about Zhao Rong, I have my own methods. Everything she has done to me, I will return it to her. Could it be that you think I can't compare to her? Emo Chuan gently flicked her forehead and said with a smile, that's right, I forgot how sly of a little fox you are. Alright, since you like playing with her, then you can slowly play with her. No matter how much you play, even if the sky collapses, I will hold it up for you. Qin Ning heard his sincere words and her heart was moved. She buried her face into his chest and hugged his waist. He was this good to her, but she had promised Gu Qingze that she would study medicine in the godly Dr. Valley for a year. How could she bear to leave him? She didn't know what to say. When Chu Xiaobai's condition recovered, she would leave. Now that Chu Xiaobai's condition was getting better every day, she didn't have much time left by his side, so she had to properly cherish the time she had with him, every minute and every moment. Emo Chuan, Qin Ning looked up and looked into his deep eyes. The two words, I love you, were on the tip of her mouth, but she couldn't say it because of her shyness. Don't worry. She had never said them in her last life and she had never said them in this life. She had never said them in her last life and had never said them in this life. Emo Chuan looked at her in anticipation. Seeing the shy blush that suddenly appeared on her face, he felt his heart tremble. Qin Ning's lips moved, but she was too embarrassed to say anything. She gritted her teeth and steeled her heart. She thought to herself that it was better to take action than to say anything. Since she was embarrassed to say it, she would show it with action. Qin, as you want to say? As soon as Emo Chuan's voice fell, she stood on her tiptoes and wrapped her hands around his neck, using her soft lips to press against his. She took the initiative to kiss him. Her lips and tongue were gentle, like the gurgling of water. Her sweet fragrance immediately entered his heart. Chapter 1422. The two of them kissed each other. After a long time, Emo Chuan finally reluctantly left her lips. Do you know what the consequences of doing this are? He said in a low and hoarse voice that could not be suppressed. His eyes stared right at her blushing cheeks. Of course I know. Emo Chuan, I want to give myself to you. I want to be a true husband and wife with you. She closed her eyes, not daring to look at his passionate eyes. She was afraid that if he saw it, he would not have the courage to speak. She had been married to him for so long, but with so many things happening, the two of them still had not become a true husband and wife. Tonight, she wanted to give herself to him, not leaving a single regret. Really? You won't regret it? You. Is the poison in your body all right? Her words made Emo Chuan's heart tremble and he was filled with joy. He had been looking forward to this moment for a long time and after waiting for so long, his wish was finally fulfilled. He did not plan on letting her go tonight, but for her to say these words, it made him want to cry. His beloved girl was wholeheartedly devoted to him. He was satisfied in this life. Regret. Qin Ning opened her eyes and looked at him with watery eyes. With a faint smile she said, "Towards you I will never regret it." Although her voice was soft, her tone was very firm. Emo Chuan was filled with joy as he picked her up. He did not walk on the bed, but rather he walked around the room like a child. While he was spinning he was laughing out loud with joy. "Ha ha, I'm too happy. Ning, you don't know how happy your words make me." A smile bloomed on his handsome face. The smile covered the corners of his eyes and his entire body was like the sun, releasing a dazzling glow. Qin Ning looked at him with a faint smile. Qin Ning looked at him with a faint smile. She had never seen him this happy before, making her heart feel like it was a sunny day. If it was possible, she really wanted him to be happy like this for the rest of his life. If it was possible, she really wanted to stay by his side forever, never leaving. The corners of her eyes unknowingly became wet. It was because of happiness, because of joy, but most of it was because she was touched. "Stop spinning in circles. If you keep spinning, I'm going to faint," she said with a smile. "All right, I won't spin any more." Emo Chuan smiled as he gently threw her over. She felt like she was flying through the clouds, and when she landed, the soft mattress under her felt like it was being gently placed on her. "Ning, I hope that every day of our lives will be as happy as today." His arms supported her face, and his handsome face was only a few inches away from hers. They could hear each other's breath, and his beautiful voice was filled with tenderness and happiness. "No." She playfully blinked her watery eyes. Emo Chuan could not help being stunned. "We will be happier every day," she whispered. "We will be happier day by day." A smile appeared on Emo Chuan's face. He gave a gentle peck on her face and his eyes were a bit dazzled as he looked at her below him. Having just taken a bath, she was only wearing a thin and soft outer garment. The slightly loosened collar revealed her snow-white skin, which made her pair of clear and bright eyes look dark and bright. Her lips were bright red, and her black hair was scattered like clouds on the side of the red pillow. Her expression was slightly lazy, like a slightly swaying drunken lotus. Chapter 14:23. This kind of beautiful her, this kind of charming her, only he had seen it before. Not only did she give her body, she even gave her entire heart to him. In this world there was no one happier than him right now. From tonight onwards he would have her entire body, her entire heart. There would not be any power that could separate them. Emo Chuan took a deep breath and brushed away a strand of hair from her temple, helping her put it behind her ear. He told himself that he had to be gentle and not act like a lecher. He had to not scare her and make her feel pain. He gently undid her clothes with a gentle expression that had never been seen before. His every move was very careful, as if she was a fragile glass doll. When Qin Ning saw this, she wanted to laugh and was touched. She wasn't made of glass. How could she break just by touching it? "Emo Chuan, you're being so gentle, are you trying to tickle me?" She pretended to be angry as she stared at him and suddenly bit his ear. He had indeed made her entire body tremble. Emo Chuan's ear instantly turned hot. He looked up and there was a trace of passion in his eyes. He took a deep breath and said, "All right, this is what you said. You're not allowed to cry out in pain later." Humph, this little girl, she actually dared to bite his ear at this time. No matter what, he had to bite her back. He also bit her ear, but he didn't use any strength, but it made her feel even more itchy. Emo Chuan, stop playing. Before she could finish, she saw Emo Chuan suddenly look up. His brows knit together as he sat up on the bed, staring right at the window. Did something happen? Qin Ning also sat up. Seeing Emo Chuan's expression, she guessed that something had happened, so she looked out the window with him. Emo Chuan said in a deep voice, "Shao Si." "What Shao Si?" As soon as Qin Ning asked this, she heard the sound of hurried footsteps outside the window. Then Shao Si's anxious voice rang out. "Emperor, this is bad. Something big has happened." He forcefully slammed the door, creating a pa-pa sound that was very urgent and fast. Qin Ning knew that something big had happened when she heard this. She saw Emo Chuan's figure flash and he appeared in front of the door, opening it. Shao Si fell in like a ball and kneeled on the ground. He said with a crying face, "Emperor, this servant did not do a good job and ruined the Emperor's task. Please heavily punish this servant. This servant deserves to die 10,000 times. No, 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 even if this servant dies 100 times, it will not be enough to forgive this servant." He knelt on the ground and knocked his head on the ground, crying with tears and mucus flowing down his face. "What mistake did you do? Tell this clearly for this one." Mo Chuan of Mo Chuan of Shaoxi. Little Four knelt on the ground, kowtowing and crying but didn't say anything. Qin Ning's heart skipped a beat. She jumped off the bed and quickly charged in front of Shaoxi. She anxiously asked, "Shaoxi, quickly tell me, did something happen to Xiao Bai?" Today in the Inqing Palace, the banquet for Zhao Rong's princess was very grand, but Shaoxi, who was the emperor's personal attendant, did not show himself. Although Qin Ning did not ask Mo Chuan, she knew that Shaoxi was in Dr. Zhang's palace looking after Chu Xiaobai. In this period of time, Shaoxi and Zhu Feng had been taking turns to protect Chu Xiaobai. Chapter 1424. Hearing Qin Ning's words, Shaoxi's cries became even louder. His head hit the hard blue brick floor, creating a dong-dong sound. "This servant is guilty, it's all this servant's fault. Woo 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 woo." Mo Chuan grabbed Shaoxi's collar and lifted him up. "Shut up. You're not allowed to cry." Shaoxi lowered his head and did not resist at all. He sobbed as he said, "Emperor, Empress, King Jing and he was taken away by someone." "What?" Mo Chuan and Qin Ning's hearts skipped a beat as their eyes opened wide in disbelief. "Say that again," Mo Chuan said in a sharp voice. His voice was already trembling uncontrollably. "King Jing and he was taken away by someone," Shaoxi said through gritted teeth. His forehead was covered in a cold sweat. "Who took him away by? Tell this one clearly. This servant doesn't know, this servant really doesn't know who it is. Emperor, it's all this servant's fault. You sent this servant to take care of King Jing'an, and this servant saw that he was sleeping peacefully, so I sat on the side and did not disturb him. However, this servant did not know what happened, but this servant suddenly fell asleep. It seemed like it was just a short nap, but when this servant opened my eyes, I found that King Jing'an had disappeared from the bed. This servant was scared silly and thought that it was a dream. I grabbed my hand and bit down." Shaoxi raised his right hand. There was a clear bite mark on the back of his hand that was almost bleeding. It could be imagined how hard he had bitten down. "And then?" Mo Chuan said in a deep voice. Then this servant found that it wasn't a dream and King Jing'an really had disappeared. This servant searched inside and out, shouting until my throat was hoarse, but I still couldn't find King Jing'an. This servant went out to ask the guards, but no matter if it was the front door or the back door, they all said that they didn't see anyone leave. Emperor, Empress, King Jing'an has been sleeping all this time and has not woken up at all. Even if he woke up and saw this servant by his side, he would have woken this servant up and would not have quietly left like this. So this servant concluded that someone must have snuck in while this servant was sleeping and kidnapped King Jing'an without anyone noticing." Shaoxi said this while crying. After saying this, he began to loudly cry. He was only a 16-17-year-old youth after all. Encountering this kind of thing, other than panicking, he also began to cry. He had completely lost his mind. "Shaoxi, shut up." Mo Chuan shouted again. This time his voice had already returned to normal. We'll immediately go to Dr. Zhang's palace. Shaoxi, go call Zhu Feng." Mo Chuan very calmly gave the order. He turned to look at Qin Ning. "Ning, change your clothes and we'll go watch together." Chu Xiaobai's disappearance was a big matter and he understood Qin Ning too well. No matter what, she would not stay in the palace and wait for news of him. She would definitely go and investigate with him. Not only was she smart, but she could also find some clues that they couldn't words. Qin Ning did not wait for him to say another word. She casually grabbed a set of clothes and put it on behind the screen. When she finished changing, Zhu Feng had already come over after hearing the news. His hair was disheveled and his clothes were not properly worn. His face was drowsy but he could not hide the shock in his eyes. Chapter 1425. Let's go. Mo Chuan grabbed Qin Ning's belt with one hand and brought her to the roof, running in the direction of Dr. Zhang's palace. He was already wearing night clothes and he used a black cloak to cover her head and tail, blending in with the night. Shaoxi and Zhu Feng followed close behind. The group of people rushed to Dr. Zhang's palace like lightning and went straight to the back courtyard. When they entered, they saw Dr. Zhang standing in the room, holding a bowl of medicine that had just been brewed. His eyes were wide open as he looked at the empty bed, completely stunned. "Where is he? Where is King Jing'an's person? Why is he missing?" He muttered to himself as he rubbed his eyes. "It's not a dream, I'm not dreaming, but why is King Jing'an missing?" He had been brewing medicine in the pharmacy the entire time. When Shaoxi found out that Chu Xiaobai was missing, he immediately ran back to the palace to report, but he forgot to tell Dr. Zhang. So when Dr. Zhang sent the medicine in, he found that Chu Xiaobai, who had been sleeping in bed, was actually empty. Dr. Zhang, have you found King Jing'an? Xiao Si quickly asked. Ah, Xiao Si, you. Dr. Zhang turned around and saw Mo Chuan. His body trembled as he quickly kneeled down. This old minister greets the emperor. Greets the empress. Mo Chuan and Chen Ning did not even look at him. The two of them looked at the bed and found that Chu Xiaobai was missing. The bed he had been lying on for over a month was very clean and tidy, like no one had slept on it before. Just taking a look, Chen Ning's heart that had been hanging in the air the entire time finally relaxed. She let out a soft sigh and said, "No need to worry, nothing should have happened to Xiaobai. He shouldn't have been kidnapped." You're right. Mo Chuan also nodded, agreeing with Chen Ning's opinion. His back was drenched in cold sweat, and his taut face finally relaxed a little. He wasn't kidnapped? Then why did King Jing'an disappear? He has been unconscious for several days and hasn't woken up at all. If someone didn't kidnap him, could he have left by himself? That's impossible. Xiao Si was so anxious it was like his butt was on fire. He looked at Mo Chuan in confusion and then at Chen Ning. Chen Ning calmly said, "There are many times when something you think is impossible is more likely. I don't know how Chu Xiaobai disappeared, but I can only be sure of one thing. He definitely wasn't kidnapped by someone. If he was kidnapped, it would be in a situation where he was willing." Xiao Si was more confused the more he heard, and he scratched his head in confusion. "Empress, this servant does not understand. How could King Jing'an be so willing to be captured by others? Empress, why are you so sure that nothing happened to King Jing'an?" Chen Ning walked in front of the bed and softly said, "Look, the bedding on this bed is the best evidence." Xiao Si looked in the direction of her finger, but he still didn't understand. "You careless fellow. Look at this blanket, this pillow and this bed sheet, they are all neatly laid out. If Chu Xiaobai was taken away by the enemy, would the enemy have made the bed and folded the blanket before taking him away? Even the pillow was laid out without a single wrinkle?" Chen Ning said. Chapter 1426. But Empress, if King Jing'an wasn't kidnapped, could he have left by himself? But he has been unconscious for this long and has not woken up at all. Xiao Si had a look of disbelief on his face. "I can't answer this question, perhaps we can only ask Chu Xiaobai himself." Chen Ning could not guess the reason, so she turned to look at Zhui Feng. "Zhui Feng, can you find King Jing'an's whereabouts?" Zhui Feng had been looking around since he entered the room. He was even more careful than Chen Ning. He had already seen the problem with the mattress and his anxious mood quickly calmed down. He agreed with Chen Ning and Mo Chuan's opinion. King Jing'an was definitely not captured by the enemy. This subordinate will do his best to investigate. After Zhui Feng said this, he went under the bed and quickly came out again. Then he laid down on the ground and crawled forward like a lizard, arriving in front of the window. His actions were very strange and very funny, but no one in the room laughed. They all had serious expressions as they looked at him, their eyes filled with anticipation. If there was anyone in this world that could find Chu Xiaobai, it would be Zhui Feng. Zhui Feng leaned against the window and sniffed around for a while. Then he stood up and opened the window, jumping out and carefully searching the yard. After a while he quickly ran back and shook his head. "Emperor, Empress, this subordinate has not found any traces of King Jing'an when he left." The expression on his face was extremely dejected, because this was simply inconceivable to him. It was as if someone had ruthlessly slapped him in the face. It had to be known that his tracking skills were unparalleled in the world, but he had first met a wall with the Purple Heaven Pavilion's assassins, falling into the other side's trap, and then Chu Xiaobai's disappearance. What made it hard for him to accept was that he could not find any traces at all. "You can't find him?" Mo Chuan and Chen Ning looked at each other and revealed looks of disbelief. Xiao Si charged over and grabbed Zhui Feng's shoulder. He shouted in a voice filled with disbelief, "Zhui Feng, say that again? There is someone you can't find in this world?" Zhui Feng shook his head. His heart was filled with depression and shock. Chu Xiaobai had disappeared from this room, but he could not find any clues at all. What did this mean? This meant that Chu Xiaobai had escaped into the sky, or Chu Xiaobai had deliberately avoided his tracking. In this world, the only person that could avoid his tracking without leaving a single clue, Zhui Feng believed it was Chu Xiaobai. In terms of status, he was a subordinate and Chu Xiaobai was his highness. The difference in status was like heaven and earth, but Chu Xiaobai had never put on the airs of a highness in front of him. The two of them had gone through life and death situations to complete missions together, cooperating perfectly. Although they were master and servant, their feelings were like brothers. He had once told Chu Xiaobai about his tracking techniques, and he had even told Chu Xiaobai his most important tracking method. He had said to Chu Xiaobai and his tracking skills, Chu Chu XT Chu. Not only did he leave, he even purposely hid all the clues that Zhui Feng could find. He left cleanly, looking extremely carefree? Ling, why did he do this? Chapter 1427. Zhui Feng knew that with his wooden brain, he wouldn't be able to think of a reason even if he broke his head. He thought about it and decided to tell Mo Chuan his guess. But before he could open his mouth, he heard a cold and serene voice coming from outside the window. You don't need to look, Chu Xiaobai has already left. Everyone turned around in shock and saw Gu Qing's thin figure appear outside the window. He was still wearing a rough linen robe, and the faint starlight shined on his body, making him look like he had walked out of the night. His eyes shone in the night, his gaze dark and deep. Master! Chen Ning softly called out. Gu Qingzi slowly walked out of the room in front of everyone's eyes. He walked in front of the bed and looked at the empty bed. Then he turned around and faced everyone with an indifferent expression. Master, what do you mean by your words just now? You're saying that Xiaobai left by himself? His illness is completely cured? Chen Ning couldn't help asking. Gu Qingzi gave a slight nod and said in a calm voice, That's right, Chu Xiaobai's illness has been cured for a long time. He left by himself. Hearing this, Chen Ning knit her brows. Master, I don't understand. It wasn't just her who didn't understand. Everyone present revealed looks of doubt. Especially Dr. Zhang. In this period of time, he had been by Chu Xiaobai's side every night. Brewing medicine, feeding water, and feeding him, he had done everything himself. He had personally seen how Chu Xiaobai went from being a living dead person to slowly recovering, becoming healthier day by day. He had been looking forward to the day Chu Xiaobai woke up. But what he couldn't understand was that if Chu Xiaobai was really cured, why hadn't he woken up yet? There was only one possibility. His unconsciousness during this period of time was all an act. Dr. Zhang suddenly gave a shiver and a chill climbed up his back. Chen Ning also thought of this and her voice slightly trembled. Master, your meaning is that Xiaobai has been unconscious all this time, but he has already woken up and his illness has been cured, but he has been pretending to be unconscious all this time, right? Hearing her words, Xiaoxi and Zhui Feng both gave a cold sigh and their eyes popped out. What? Acting? Empress, you're saying that King Jing lied to all of us? But why would he do this? The two of them asked at the same time. Chen Ning did not reply and just looked at Gu Qingzi. Master, you already knew that he was pretending, right? Why didn't you tell me? What? Gu Qingzi said indifferently, It's not too late for you to know now. Chen Ning stomped her feet, almost suspecting that the person in front of her was a fake master. How could there be a more infuriating master than him? Good, very good. Gu Qingzi, you even lied to your disciple. Are you still my master or not? Chapter 1428. According to my guess, he must not be willing to wake up to face someone or something, so he would rather lie in bed like this, pretending to be unconscious. Speaking of this, I really admire his perseverance. After all these years, he didn't even open his eyes once. Just based on this point, it is something no one else can do. So, I really admire him. Little girl Chen, you know that I rarely admire people, but I can't help but admire this young man. I am willing to fulfill his wish. As long as he doesn't want to wake up, I will never expose this matter. Gu Qingzi's words made everyone present reveal a complicated expression. This was because they could all guess the reason why Chu Xiaobai didn't want to wake up. Gu Qingzi was right. Chu Xiaobai did have people and things he didn't want to face, otherwise he wouldn't have lost his will to live and only wanted to die. Chen Ning bit her lips and held back the tears in her eyes. Her heart was filled with guilt. She understood Chu Xiaobai's heart better than anyone else here. Mo Chuan looked at her without blinking, not ignoring the tears in her eyes and the expression on her face. He reached out and slowly held her hand. That warm and strong grip gave her warmth and strength. She couldn't help closing her eyes and leaning against Mo Chuan's chest. Mo Chuan, I understand now. I know why Xiaobai would silently leave like this, not leaving any clues or words behind. She said in a soft voice. Mo Chuan did not say anything and just silently held her shoulder. He could feel her body gently trembling. He must be very sad and hurt his heart. Moreover, he must be very disappointed towards me. Towards Chu Xiaoyang. Her voice was like a whisper, almost like she couldn't hear it, but she still said it in a low voice, even if it was for herself to hear. So he left. He doesn't want to see anyone and he doesn't want to return to this sad place. He wants to go far away like this, disappearing without a trace. He doesn't want us to find him and he doesn't want to see us again. Her voice became lower and lower. The last few words were already indistinct, but Emo Chuan could still hear them. His grip on her shoulder tightened slightly, and his voice was low and calm. Ning, you don't need to feel this guilty. I understand Chu Xiaobai better than you. He didn't leave because he was sad and disappointed, he was just too tired. Moreover, he was injured not only on his body but also on his heart. Although the wounds on the surface have healed, what about his heart? He needs to find a place with no one to quietly heal. Once he recovers, he will come back. Really? You are sure he will come back? She looked up. I'm sure that Xiaobai will definitely come back. That's why we shouldn't look for him right now and we shouldn't disturb him either. Give him some free time, he continued. Chapter 1429. The people in the room did not say anything. They looked at the neatly made bed and their hearts were filled with emotions. Over the past month, they had been guarding this bed every day, taking care of the dying Chu Xiaobai. Seeing him getting better day by day, everyone was waiting for the moment he would wake up and open his eyes. But no one thought that there would be a day when someone would leave and the bed would be empty. Just like that, he floated into the distance and disappeared without leaving a single word. Everyone stared at the empty bed in a daze. After a long time, Gu Qingze was the first to speak. He's already left, so what are you all still standing here for? Go back to where you came from. Chin girl, I have finished what I promised you, so you can't go back on what you promised me. In 3 days I'll wait for your reply. After he said this, he left the room without looking back. These words woke everyone up from their dreams. The people in the room looked at each other and felt that his words were very reasonable. Chu Xiaobai had already left, so weren't they just being stupid by staying here? Emo Chuan looked at Dr. Zhang and said in a warm voice, "It's been hard on you to take care of Xiaobai during this period of time. This one will give you a month of leave so you can have a good rest in the palace." Dr. Zhang gratefully kneeled down. "Many thanks, Emperor. This old minister has not worked hard. This old minister has learned a lot from the divine Dr. Gu, and the one who has benefited the most should be this old minister." Emo Chuan nodded. He pulled Qin Ning's hand and turned to leave. When the two of them returned to the palace, the sky was still not bright. It was the darkest time before dawn. Emo Chuan brought her back to the Guanyu Palace without anyone noticing. The guards around the palace did not know that the two of them had left. When they arrived at the door of the palace, the two of them stopped at the same time. Qin Ning looked at the slender figure curled up in front of the door in a daze. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. She softly called out, "Xiaoru? Young miss." Xiaoru opened her eyes in a daze. Seeing Qin Ning, her eyes instantly lit up and she happily jumped up. When she was about to say something, she suddenly saw Emo Chuan beside her. She was so scared that she swallowed the words she was about to say. "It's already this late, why aren't you sleeping in your room? Why are you sleeping here?" Qin Ning came forward and grabbed Xiaoru's hand. She felt that her hands were cold and her heart was filled with pity. Xiaoru's mouth flattened as she lowered her head and said, this servant is afraid." "Scared? What are you afraid of?" Xiaoru shrunk her neck and said, "This servant had a dream just now. I dreamed that the red-clothed demon came again. He was standing in front of me, revealing his white teeth as he grinned at me. He was like a wolf that wanted to eat people. I was scared awake, and after waking up, I didn't dare go back to sleep. So this servant came to the young miss door to guard. As long as the young miss was inside, this servant felt safe and wasn't afraid at all. Young miss, can you not chase me away? I'll sleep at the door and definitely won't disturb you and His Majesty." She trembled as she spoke, not daring to look at Emo Chuan. Qin Ning held her ice-cold hand and touched her face. It was also ice-cold. She was filled with pain and anger and couldn't help cursing the red-clothed thousand-faced young master in her heart. He really was a bastard that wouldn't leave. He actually came to Xiaoru's dream to scare her. Chapter 1430. Nonsense, it's cold and windy here, you'll get sick if you sleep here. If you get sick, who will take care of me in the future? Go to sleep for me. If I find out that you're sleeping here again, I'll have Xiaoxi spank your butt. Qin Ning had a serious face as she scolded Xiaoru. Young miss, this servant is scared. Xiaoru looked down at her feet, not moving at all. Qin Ning helplessly gave a sigh. All right, I'll sleep with you tonight. You have to be good, you're not allowed to sleep talk, not allowed to grind your teeth, not allowed to snore, and you're not allowed to hit people when you're asleep, do you understand? She said this as she pulled Xiaoru to her room. Ah, Young miss? Xiaoru was surprised and happy. She timidly turned around and secretly looked at Emo Chuan. She found that Emo Chuan was staring at her with a face like a storm was brewing. She couldn't help shivering. No need, young miss. This servant will go back to my room now. This servant will sleep by myself. Young miss, you should go back to your room with the emperor. She stopped and refused to take another step. Looking at the emperor's eyes, it was 10,000 times more terrifying than the red-clothed demons. If she pulled the young miss to sleep with her, her head would be removed in the middle of the night. Xiaoru, aren't you afraid? Qin Ning suspiciously looked at her. I'm not afraid. As long as I see the young miss, this servant is not afraid at all. Young miss, this servant will go back to sleep now. Xiaoru broke free of her hand and quickly ran away. Qin Ning looked at Xiaoru's sorry figure as she ran away and then turned to look at Emo Chuan. You're scaring her again, aren't you? Her eyes revealed a trace of complaint. Emo Chuan walked over and pulled her into the palace, closing the door with a pung sound. Qin Ning felt this was bad, but before she could say anything her chin was pinched by Emo Chuan, forcing her to look up. Now, do you have anything you want to say to me? Emo Chuan slightly lowered his head. His dark eyes flashed with a dangerous glow that she could not understand as he stared at her without blinking. What are you talking about? Her eyes drifted to the side, avoiding his aggressive gaze. Say, you agreed to Gu Qing's condition. He said word for word. She couldn't help biting her lips and thinking in her heart. It's over, she couldn't avoid it. Gu Qing's words before he left clearly indicated that he had already fulfilled his promise and saved Chu Xiaobai. She had to go to the valley to learn medicine for a year. Gu Qing's words before he left clearly indicated that he had fulfilled his promise and saved Chu Xiaobai. Now it was her turn to fulfill her promise and follow him to the godly Dr. Valley to study medicine for a year. He gave her 3 days. But how would she tell Emo Chuan? If Emo Chuan knew that he agreed to Gu Qing's condition, what kind of reaction would he have? Or would he be? Or would he? Of anger? It was very likely that he would skin him alive and eat him alive. When she thought of this, she felt her head hurt. She did not dare look at Emo Chuan's eyes at all. Emo Chuan, actually, I don't have any conditions. She hesitated and stuttered, not knowing what to say. Emo Chuan did not say anything and just looked at her with his deep eyes. It was like he could see into her heart, making her feel even more guilty. Chapter 1431. Qin Ning steeled her heart and took a breath before saying, All right, I'll tell you. I promised my master that as long as he cured Chu Xiaobai, I'll go with him to the godly Dr. Valley and learn medicine for a year. I also promised him that I'll help him win a competition. After she said this, she closed her eyes and opened them again, waiting for Emo Chuan to explode like a storm. Who would have thought that Emo Chuan's expression would be as calm as usual, not showing the excitement she imagined? There was only a strange glow that flashed in his dark eyes. Are you done? Is that the condition? Emo Chuan calmly said. I'm done, that's the condition. She firmly nodded. Not knowing why, she felt like Emo Chuan had let out a sigh of relief. His taut face instantly relaxed and his sharp and cold eyes became gentle. He loosened his grip on her chin and stroked her chin. His voice became softer. Go to the godly Dr. Valley to learn medicine for a year, he asked in a soft voice. Yes. She nodded and looked into his eyes with a deep apologetic look. I'm very sorry, Emo Chuan. I should have told you earlier, but I really didn't know how to say it. I was worried that after you knew you would... She bit her lips and didn't continue. You're worried that I'll eat you when I'm angry? Isn't that right? Emo Chuan said in a soft voice, but there was a faint smile in his eyes. Very good, this girl still knew to be afraid. She also knew that he would be angry. At least she didn't let down his feelings for her. Emo Chuan, I know you won't be happy hearing this news, but I've already promised my master that I'll only go for a year, just a year. I'll definitely come back after a year, alright? Her voice was soft and her eyes were soft. Alright. Emo Chuan replied without any hesitation. This time it was Qin Ning's turn to be stunned. Emo Chuan, what did you just say? She asked in an uncertain voice, thinking that she had heard wrong. I said I'll agree. Really? I am the Son of Heaven and the words the Son of Heaven says are like gold. Are you afraid I'll go back on my word? Emo Chuan looked at her. But why did you suddenly become so easy to talk to? She opened her eyes in disbelief, suspecting that the person in front of her was a fake Emo Chuan. In your eyes, am I a tyrant? Emo Chuan pretended to be angry and turned his hand over, then he slapped her, but If you dare act on your own next time, it won't be just your but, remember. I'll remember it, I'll remember it. There won't be a next time. She stuck out her tongue guiltily and smiled. She stuck her tongue out and revealed a smile on her face. This time she had acted first and asked later. She thought that Mo Chuan would fly into a rage, but she never thought that he would happily agree. It seemed like she didn't understand him that well. His heart was deeper than the sea. Very good, now obediently go to bed for me. It was rare to see her obedient appearance, so Mo Chuan's heart was filled with satisfaction. He stroked her hair and picked her up, walking into the room. Although it was only a dozen or so steps from the door to the inner room, he didn't want to separate from her even during these dozen or so steps. He just wanted to hug her tightly. When are we leaving? He suddenly remembered this important matter. Qin Ning replied without any hesitation, in 3 days. Chapter 1432. She could only stay by his side for 3 more days. He had to properly grasp these 3 days and properly cherish them. He had to leave the most beautiful and rich color in her life, making it so that she would never forget him in her life. She would think of him every day after they parted. He wanted to fill her heart to the brim, making it so that she would never be able to accept another man's place. He had to do everything he could to treat her well. He placed her on the bed and kissed her face. Then he took a breath and stood up, beginning to take off his clothes. Qin Ning's face turned red to her ears. She understood what he wanted, but she never thought that he would be this anxious and impatient. She had already decided to give herself to him, but it was already dawn. Did he really need to do it now? Mo Chuan, you. Her face turned red as she stammered. She looked away, not daring to look at his appearance after he took off his clothes. Although she knew that his figure was very pleasing to the eye, thinking about what was going to happen next, it really made her feel very embarrassed. What about me? Mo Chuan took off his night clothes and was only wearing a crescent moon white shirt. He stood in front of the bed, looking at her shy appearance with a funny expression. How could he not know what was going on in this girl's head? But even though he wanted it, he couldn't do it now. They had plenty of time in the future and he wasn't in a hurry. He had to make their first time as beautiful as a dream. He wasn't in such a hurry to devour her. Silly girl, your face is so red, what are you thinking about? You wouldn't think that I want you, right? He deliberately leaned down and placed his arm next to her face. He slowed down his voice and revealed a teasing look. She was already so nervous that she couldn't breathe, but when she heard his tone, her face turned even redder. She turned to look at his beautiful face that was magnified in front of her, as well as that pair of eyes looking at her with deep emotion. Her heart began to beat wildly. Mo Chuan, you're doing this on purpose. You're playing with me. She raised her fist in embarrassment and anger to hit his chest. He smiled as he let her hit his chest twice. Then he smiled as he grabbed her hand and held it in his palm. Silly girl, of course I want you, but now is not the time. The morning court is about to begin, and I have something important to do today. The Northern Qi envoy is leaving the capital today, and I have to lead the civil and military officials to send him off. Otherwise, do you think I would let you go so easily? He kissed her on the lips and reluctantly let go of her. Standing up, he picked up his court attire and began to put it on. Qin Ning let out a sigh of relief, but her face was still beating rapidly. She was secretly glad that the Northern Qi envoy had chosen today to leave the capital, otherwise it would have been difficult for her to escape Mo Chuan's clutches. She revealed a faint smile and got off the bed to help Mo Chuan fasten his jade belt. Seeing that he was dressed neatly, he had turned back into that high and mighty young son of heaven that no one could look at. It was like he was a completely different person from last night when he was dressed in black. What's wrong? Why are you looking at me like this? Do you think I'm pretty and you can't get enough of me? Mo Chuan rarely made a joke with her. You flatter yourself. She glared at him and still did not take her eyes off him. Chapter 1433. Qin Ning hesitated for a bit before finally asking. Mo Chuan, why did you promise me to study medicine at the godly Dr. Valley for a year? Mo Chuan's hand that was stroking her hair slightly paused. Then he revealed a nonchalant smile. If I didn't agree, you wouldn't have gone? He countered with a question. No, of course not. She replied. He looked at her with a sincere expression and said, if I didn't agree, you wouldn't be happy, but you would still insist on doing what you did. Since it's like this, why wouldn't I just agree to you and make you happy? Could it be that in your heart, I'm a person that only cares about myself and doesn't care about you? Mo Chuan. She bit her lips and a warm feeling filled her heart. His words were straightforward and heartwarming, leaving her almost speechless. But was this really what his heart was thinking? All right, silly girl, wait for me to come back if you have anything to say. I'm going to go to court now, so you should lie down and sleep. If you say another word, see how I'll deal with you when I come back. He threateningly glared at her before placing her on the bed and covering her with the blanket. She listened and closed her eyes. His lips gently fell down and he placed a light kiss on her forehead. Although it was very soft, it had an intoxicating sweetness that penetrated straight into her heart. When she opened her eyes again, she found that she was the only one left in the room. Emo Chuan had already left at an unknown time. She opened her eyes wide and looked at the top of the tent. She was in a daze, not feeling sleepy at all. How could she fall asleep? Thinking of Chu Xiaobai, her heart felt like it was being blocked by a large piece of cotton, making her feel uncomfortable. Xiaobai, Chu Xiaobai, where are you right now? Did you really leave the capital? Are you really going to leave without saying goodbye like this? She understood him too well. He was like a lonely and proud crane. He would rather be alone for the rest of his life than accept other people's pitiful gazes. Perhaps he had wanted to leave a long time ago, but he couldn't let go of the ties in his heart. Now he had finally let it go. He once told her that he wanted to travel to all the famous mountains and rivers in the world. He wanted to see all the beautiful sceneries in the world. He even said that he wanted to take her with him and leave their footprints in every scenic spot. His words seemed like something that happened in her previous life, but when she heard it, she was inexplicably moved. Her wish was exactly the same as his. She also wanted to live a carefree and uninhibited life. She wanted to live a carefree and unfettered life. But in the end she fell in love with Emo Chuan. It was Emo Chuan who left her behind. She was like a kite, with Emo Chuan tightly holding onto the string. No matter how far she flew, she would always be in his palm. She was willing to be tied down by him. In her eyes, this palace used to be an exquisitely crafted golden cage. She never thought that one day she would willingly move in here, not for anything else, but because he was here. Wherever he was, it was her home, her heaven. Chen Ning's lips slowly curled into a faint smile. She blinked her long eyelashes and suddenly revealed a relieved smile. Chu Xiaobai had done what she couldn't do. Chu Xiaobai had done what she couldn't do. The current Xiaobai, he should be very happy. She should also be happy because of his happiness. Chapter 1434. Chen Ning did not know when she had fallen asleep. She slept very soundly. When she woke up, she could faintly feel that there was something warm beside her. When she opened her eyes, she found that Xiao Ru was curled up at her feet like a little kitten. She was sleeping very sweetly, with sparkling drool coming from the corner of her mouth. She couldn't help smiling. Seeing Xiao Ru's carefree appearance, she felt a kind of satisfied and warm feeling. This palace was not as cold as she imagined. There was not only Emo Chuan here, there was also Xiao Ru. The two of them were like two warm flames. As long as she saw them, her heart would feel warm. She did not wake Xiao Ru up and gently covered her with the blanket. Then she quietly got off the bed and walked over to the window. Opening the window, she took in a deep breath of fresh air. "Young miss, you're awake?" Xiao Ru's confused voice came from behind her. Xiao Ru rubbed her eyes and looked at Chen Ning's back in front of the window. Only then did she realize that she had fallen asleep on the corner of the bed. She instantly hit her head in annoyance. This servant really deserves to die. I actually slept like a dead pig and even forgot about the important matter the emperor ordered me to do. The important matter Emo Chuan ordered you to do? What is it? Chen Ning turned around in a strange manner. Before the emperor left, he ordered this servant to invite the young miss to the north gate if you woke up. But when this servant came in and saw the young miss sleeping so soundly, this servant didn't have the heart to wake you up. I don't know why, but this servant also fell asleep. If this delays the emperor's important matter, the emperor will chop off this servant's head when he comes back. Go to the north gate? Chen Ning thought about it and understood. She remembered that Emo Chuan had said something before he left. He was leading the civil and military officials to send the northern Qi envoys back to the north. He hoped that she could also send them off. After all, she was the queen of a country and showing her face at this kind of grand ceremony was her duty. She looked up at the sky outside. It was not even noon yet, so she changed into the Empress clothes and boarded the sedan. Under the escort of Jue Feng and the imperial guards, she headed to the north gate. From afar, he could see the grand procession of people sending him off at the north gate tower. In order to show their respect to the northern Qi envoys, Emo Chuan personally led the civil and military officials to send them off. The soldiers of the imperial army wore resplendent armors and bright clothes, and when looked at from afar, they were like a grand and imposing long dragon that one couldn't see the end of. The northern Qi envoy looked at this scene and his heart was filled with emotions. Before he went to West Chu, he didn't put the West Chu army in his eyes and he didn't have any respect for the young Emperor Mo Chuan. He thought that he was just a wet behind-the-ears brat who had only ascended the throne with the support of Empress Dowager Zhou. After ascending the throne, he had to pay tribute to East Qin every year. He was simply too useless. Northern Qi had always maintained a neutral position among the four countries, and was the target that the other three countries fought to befriend. Not only did they possess the black iron mine that everyone dreamed of, but they were also renowned for their skill in forging weapons. It was said that the best weaponsmithing master in the world, Qi Yanyu, was from Northern Qi. Chapter 1435. The Northern Qi envoy had received orders to go to West Chu. He took the initiative to express goodwill to West Chu, selling the 5 repeating crossbow blueprint that both East Qin and South Yu coveted. However, he could not understand why the Northern Qi emperor would give him such a strange mission. The importance of the quintuple crossbows blueprint and how important it was in the military, the emperor knew this better than him. If he sold this blueprint to either East Qin or South Yu, the benefits would be much greater than if he sold it to West Chu. Not to mention that if East Qin and South Yu knew that Northern Qi had sold the 5 repeating crossbow blueprint to West Chu, these two powerful countries would be extremely dissatisfied with Northern Qi. This would create hidden dangers for Northern Qi. For all of these reasons, the Northern Qi envoy felt that his emperor had made an absurd and inconceivable decision. But the ruler had an order and the officials had to follow it. Although the Northern Qi envoy followed orders after coming to West Chu, his arrogance unconsciously appeared on his face and in his words. He had never imagined that he would encounter the incident of losing the quintuple crossbow blueprint, and that the blueprint had disappeared right under his nose. After investigating this matter, the final suspect had actually become him. All of the evidence pointed to him stealing what he had been guarding. This made him, who had always been high above, instantly lower his imposing manner. He became like a stray dog, losing all of his prestige. If it wasn't for the West Chu country's empress having a pair of sharp eyes, finding the map and clearing his name, he would have killed himself to prove his innocence. Therefore, after this unforeseen event, his mood had already undergone a great change. He had been looking down on the West Chu country before, but now that he looked at it, how could the West Chu country still be that weak little country in his eyes? Just by looking at the team of royal guards riding on horseback, their fierce eyes, strict discipline and impressive military might, he did not dare to underestimate them in the slightest. Also, their young emperor had changed his previous impression. Although the emperor called Chu Mo Chuan was young, he was as unfathomable as the sea. Even he, who had been immersed in politics for many years, could not see through the other's depths. The person he admired and was most grateful to was the West Chu Empress. She was extremely intelligent and her eyes seemed to be able to see through his heart. Under the gaze of those clear eyes, he felt as if he had nowhere to hide. Powerful, truly powerful. West Chu had such a young and promising emperor, their future development was limitless. He suddenly realized that West Chu was like a sharp blade hidden in the snow. It was slowly peeling off the outer shell of ice and snow, gradually revealing its incomparably sharp edge. Once it appeared, it would definitely shock the world. When it appeared, it would shock the world. The Northern Qi envoy had a face full of smiles as he said these polite words to Mo Chuan, who had come to see him off. His tone was humble and polite, completely different from the arrogant and rude person he was when he first came to West Chu. The West Chu officials could not help but look at each other. They all rubbed their eyes and looked at the Northern Qi envoy with disbelief. They did not know what had happened in between, they only felt that it was inconceivable. Chapter 1436. What was the reason for his sudden change from arrogance to deference? Was there something about West Chu that Northern Qi was willing to bow down and curry favor with? The ministers all perked up their ears to listen to the conversation between Mo Chuan and the Northern Qi envoy. They could only hear the Northern Qi envoy's words of praise, all of which were for West Chu, making them feel as if they were floating. Mo Chuan's face did not show any expression. His expression was indifferent. No matter how much the Northern Qi envoy praised them, he only slightly raised his eyebrows. His clear eyes flashed. This made the Northern Qi envoy feel that he was even more enigmatic, and his reverence for him increased. "Honorable envoy, it's getting late." The other side's repeated praises had already rubbed his ears with calluses. Mo Chuan could not help but speak up, interrupting the Northern Qi envoy, hinting that it was time for him to leave. An awkward smile appeared on the face of the Northern Qi envoy, and he glanced in the direction they had come from. "Sir, are you waiting for someone?" Mo Chuan asked without batting an eyelid. "Yes, I hope to see the Empress before I leave and personally thank her," the Northern Qi envoy finally said. He had been waiting for Chen Ning for a long time. Who would have thought that after waiting for so long, Chen Ning would not appear? The Empress. Mo Chuan muttered. He thought to himself, he had already told little Ru to tell her when Chen Ning woke up. As for when she would wake up and when she would come, even he could not say for sure. The Empress has not been feeling well these past few days, so she cannot come to see you off. I hope you do not mind. So it's like this. The Northern Qi envoy could not help but reveal a look of disappointment. He looked in the direction they had come from and his eyes suddenly lit up. He happily said, "The Empress is here." Mo Chuan looked back and saw Chen Ning's sedan chair appear in his line of sight. He could not help but curl his lips. The Northern Qi envoy did not wait for the sedan chair to come closer. He impatiently went forward to welcome it. "The Empress, I have been waiting for you to appear. You have finally arrived." He stood outside the sedan chair and respectfully said. Little Ru opened the curtain and Chen Ning slowly stepped out. Her face was beautiful and graceful. When everyone saw her, they could not help but feel a deep sense of respect. The scene became completely silent. Her gentle gaze fell on the Northern Qi envoy's face. She smiled and said, "Sir, you have returned. I have come to see you off, but I have come late. I hope you do not mind." No. The Empress is too polite. The Empress is too polite. I am honored that you have personally come to see me off." The Northern Qi envoy's face was full of joy, and his tone was sincere. This made all the West Chu ministers click their tongues. How could this guy whose eyes grew on the top of his head become so respectful and courteous when he saw the Empress? Strange truly. Chen Ning knew that the Northern Qi envoy was grateful to her. She smiled, but before she could say anything, she saw the envoy take a beautiful brocade box from a servant next to him and respectfully present it to her with both hands. "Sir, I have Qi to Chen. Chen I cheese you Qi Chen Qi not to me. Chen. I she he Chen and said. Chen Qi there I'm not to thank Chen Qi. Qi Chen to say. Ling Chen I cannot I Chen I Qi and Qi I Chen I you I I's Qi grace and I not. Chapter 1437. He placed the box in front of Chen Ning and said with a sincere expression, "The Empress' kindness to this humble one, how can this gift be enough to repay you? This gift really isn't worth mentioning. It's just a treasure sword for a hero and a beauty for a beauty. This gift was specially prepared by me for the Empress. I asked the Empress to accept it." "Oh, then let me see what it is." When Chen Ning heard this, she was filled with curiosity. She reached out and took it. She gently pushed the lid open and the box opened. Inside the brocade box was an exquisitely carved pure silver phoenix hairpin. The phoenix was carved so vividly that it seemed to be alive. When the sun shone on it, it shone brightly and its brilliance flowed. It was incomparably resplendent. TSK, I thought it was some kind of treasure. So it's just a silver hairpin. It's pretty, but it's not worth much. A dignified envoy from Northern Qi actually gave our Empress such a shabby thing. The Northern Qi kingdom is so rich, yet they only gave the Empress a silver hairpin. Do they still place our West Chu in their eyes? When the surrounding people saw the silver hairpin, they couldn't help but look at the Northern Qi envoy with disdain. "Humph, you still say the Empress is kind to you, yet you give her such a worthless thing to repay her. How stingy." Chen Ning's face didn't show any disdain. This silver hairpin was exquisitely made and she liked it very much. It was more to her liking than the exquisite and complicated jewelry in the palace. "This hairpin is very pretty. Many thanks to the envoy." The one who spoke was Mo Chuan. He took out the silver hairpin from the box and placed it in Chen Ning's hair. The Northern Qi envoy was overjoyed. He smiled and said, "Many thanks to the Emperor. Many thanks to the Empress." Xiao Ru, who was standing to the side, couldn't help but laugh. She thought that this envoy was really interesting. He was the one who gave the young miss a gift, so it should be the young miss thanking him. But he kept thanking her, as if the young miss accepting his gift was giving him a lot of face. After the Northern Qi envoy gave the gift, he said his goodbyes to the two of them. He had no more worries in his heart. Under the escort of the envoy, the group of people left the city and headed north. Emo Chuan and Chen Ning stood side by side on the city wall to send them off. They watched as the group went further and further away until they disappeared. Let's go back. The wind is strong here, so be careful of catching a cold. Emo Chuan held her hand. He felt that the back of her hand was slightly cold as he said this. Chen Ning kept looking in the direction of the northern Qi envoy. She seemed to be deep in thought. Hearing Emo Chuan's words, she turned her head. Emo Chuan, you didn't notice? Emo Chuan, you didn't notice? There's a little attendant beside the messenger, and he's been sneaking glances at you. Along the way, he's even turned his head back 3 times from the horse's back, only to look at you. Does he know you? Of him. I didn't pay attention. Emo Chuan thought back, but he didn't have any impression at all. Chen Ning didn't pay attention to him at first because Emo Chuan's appearance was outstanding and he was an emperor. No matter where he went, he would be the focus of everyone's attention. Which one of the northern Qi envoys didn't look at him? However, the attendant kept walking far away and kept turning back. This was a little strange. She tried hard to recall the young attendant's appearance in her mind, but it was very blurry. Chapter 1438. Chen Ning had a photographic memory, but she only remembered that this attendant had always been by the northern Qi envoy's side. She had seen him at the guest house, but she didn't have much of an impression of this small and thin attendant who never spoke. The only thing she remembered was that when she found the missing 5 repeating crossbow blueprints, everyone present had a look of shock on their faces. That attendant had also raised his head and glanced at him. She remembered now. He wasn't very old, only about 15 or 16 years old. He had a very delicate face and a pair of large black and white eyes. He had only glanced at her once before quickly lowering his head. At the time, she hadn't looked at this little attendant again. If she hadn't seen him turn his head 3 times, she wouldn't have thought of this person at all. It's just our attendant, yet you're still so concerned about him. I've already seen that the people that the northern Qi envoy brought this time don't have any martial arts experts. In terms of martial arts, none of them are even half as good as Zhue Feng. Don't worry, he definitely isn't an assassin sent by Zixiao Pavilion. Emo Chuan saw that her eyes were still looking to the north with a thoughtful expression, so he spoke to dispel the doubts in her heart. Chen Ning gave a faint smile. What Emo Chuan cared about was different from what she cared about. He only cared about the other's martial arts, but what she was thinking about was completely different. She didn't suspect that the attendant was an assassin in disguise, otherwise he wouldn't have escaped Emo Chuan's eyes. However, no matter what the attendant's identity was, whether it was a real attendant or a fake one, he had already left with the northern Qi envoy. Thinking about this right now was a bit groundless. I know, let's go back to the palace. She and Emo Chuan walked down the tower side by side and boarded the sedan back to the palace. The sedan that the two of them were in had just arrived in front of the palace when they suddenly heard the rapid sound of horse hooves coming from the palace gates. Chen Ning lifted the curtain of the sedan and looked in the direction of the sound. She saw a group of imperial guards riding horses, quickly rushing out of the palace. Everyone had a panicked expression on their faces, as if something big had happened. The commander of the imperial guards in front saw Emo Chuan and Chen Ning's sedan and immediately fell off his horse, kneeling on the ground. Reporting to the emperor, something bad has happened. Emo Chuan was shocked and said in a deep voice, "What happened? Is the Empress Dowager well?" His first thought was that something had happened to Empress Dowager. What he was worried about the most was that the Purple Heaven Pavilion assassins had taken advantage of this and injured Empress Dowager. The commander of the Imperial Guards was stunned and immediately replied, "The Empress Dowager is well, yes, yes." His face was filled with panic as he looked up at Emo Chuan, wanting to say something but hesitating. Emo Chuan knit his brows and shouted, "Quickly speak, what happened?" The royal army commander lowered his head and replied, "Emperor King Ding Yuan has escaped from prison." What? Emo Chuan and Chen Ning were both shocked, almost not daring to believe their ears. "You're saying Chu Xiaoyang escaped from prison? When did this happen?" Emo Chuan calmed himself down and asked. Chapter 1439. An hour ago? Emo Chuan couldn't help knitting his brows. That was the time the northern Qi envoys left. Chu Xiaoyang didn't break out earlier or later, but chose to break out at this time. What was his goal? "Come, let's go to the celestial prison." With a wave of his sleeve, he led the way. The celestial prison that imprisoned Chu Xiaoyang was not the same place as the one the Ministry of Justice used to imprison criminals. This celestial prison was located outside the palace, next to the cold palace. Normal members of the royal family would be imprisoned here if they made a mistake. The security was even stricter than the Ministry of Justice's celestial prison, but the conditions inside the celestial prison were much better than normal prisons. The walls of Chu Xiaoyang's cell were made of very thick granite and there was a large window at the top of the cell. The sunlight shined in through the window, making the entire cell very bright. It did not give off the dark and damp feeling of a normal cell. The bedding on the bed was very clean and it felt very dry to the touch. At first glance, this did not seem like a cell, but rather a quiet room for cultivating one's mind. The difference between this and a quiet room was that it did not have a door. It was surrounded by 3 stone walls and on the other side was an iron fence as thick as a child's arm. There was a heavy iron lock on it. Now that the iron lock had been twisted, falling to the ground. The iron door was wide open and the room was empty. Chu Xiaoyang, who was locked in the room, was nowhere to be seen. There was only Chu Xiaoyang locked up in the heavenly prison. There were several dozen guards, but all of them were heavily injured and the doctors were busy treating them. Seeing Mo Chuan and Chen Ning arrive, the guards did not care about their injuries. As long as they could move, they all knelt down and kowtowed, pleading guilty. Their hearts were filled with panic. They were not good enough and had allowed a prisoner to escape. This was a capital crime, enough to exterminate their entire family. Mo Chuan gently pressed down on the chest of an injured guard and the guard immediately revealed a pained expression. He gritted his teeth and endured it, not letting out a cry of pain. That's right, it was Chu Xiaoyang's great guardian deity Palm. Mo Chuan revealed a serious expression. He had tested it just now and found out that the guard had 3 broken ribs and had suffered heavy internal injuries. This strong and fierce Palm was a secret art that Chu Xiaoyang practiced, called the great guardian deity Palm. This great guardian deity Palm was a secret art of the Chu family. It was very strong and it was very strong. Although Mo Chuan had practiced it before, his cultivation in this secret art was not as deep as Chu Xiaoyang's. He took out a medicine bottle from his chest and threw it to the guard. He simply said, take it and take it. It will be fine in 3 days. This was the most effective medicine for treating the great guardian deity. The guard was extremely grateful. He prostrated himself on the ground and kowtowed repeatedly. Mo Chuan examined several dozen injured guards and found that they were all injured by the great golden palm. His brows knit together and he called the doctor over, reading the prescription for the great golden palm over. The imperial physician was pleasantly surprised and committed it to memory. They weren't good at treating internal injuries, so they were at their wits' end. Suddenly hearing the emperor personally tell them the prescription, all of them became spirited. Xiaoxi, write down the names of all the injured and have the Internal Affairs Treasury give each of them 500 silver coins as compensation. Mo Chuan then gave orders to Xiaoxi. Chapter 1440. These guards were originally dispirited and filled with fear and terror after releasing a serious prisoner from the heavenly prison and being severely injured. However, they never expected that not only did the emperor not issue an imperial edict to punish them, he even personally bestowed them good medicine and issued an imperial edict to commend them. This made everyone unable to believe their ears. They were overjoyed and couldn't blame their injuries for worsening. Only then would they be able to live up to the emperor's deep kindness. Mo Chuan walked in front of Chu Xiaoyang's cell and his eyes fell onto the iron lock on the ground. Xiaoxi was very clever. He immediately bent down to pick it up and gave it to Mo Chuan. King Dingyuan's fingers are so strong. Emperor, look at this lock, it was actually bent by King Dingyuan's fingers. He couldn't help smacking his lips. The iron lock was made of fine iron and was very strong, but there were several deep fingerprints left on it. Mo Chuan's expression became even more serious. He held the heavy iron lock and did not say a word. Although Chen Ning did not have any internal energy, she knew that Chu Xiaoyang's cultivation must be very high to be able to bend this lock with just the strength of his fingers. Mo Chuan, can you do it? She asked in a soft voice. Mo Chuan shook his head and said, I can't do it. After pausing for a bit, he then said, I never thought that his cultivation would soar and reach this step. This iron lock, with his previous cultivation, he would not have been able to break it no matter what. He gave the iron lock to Xiaoxi and walked into the cell looking around. Chen Ning followed him in and found that Mo Chuan was staring right at the wall. She followed his gaze. She saw that there was a deep palm print on the stone wall and she couldn't help taking in a cold breath. Xiaoxi let out a surprised cry. Such a powerful golden strength palm. He blurted out. Mo Chuan's face was as calm as water. He slowly reached out with his right palm and pressed it against the palm print. After a while, he took his hand back and said in a low voice, He actually succeeded. The stone wall was made of thick and heavy granite stones. It was almost unthinkable to leave a mark on this incomparably hard stone wall with flesh and blood. But Chu Xiaoyang's palm was very strong. It was not something that could be done with flesh and blood. No wonder even Emo Chuan couldn't help being surprised. What does he mean by leaving a palm print here? Is he trying to show off to the emperor? Xiao Si stared at the palm print and felt a chill run down his spine. Even the gaps between his teeth felt cold. Emo Chuan gave a cold laugh. Does he think that after learning the golden strength palm, he is invincible in this world? No wonder he was able to escape from prison. It turns out that he had nothing to fear. With the mighty Vajra palm, he indeed has the qualifications to bark at me. Emo Chuan, the golden strength palm is a very powerful martial art. She had heard Emo Chuan mention this martial art several times. Especially after seeing the palm prints and finger marks left by Chu Xiaoyang on the stone wall and the iron lock, she did not dare underestimate this martial art. Chapter 1441. Previous Emperor? The previous emperor you're talking about, is he Chu Xiaoyang's father? Chen Ning asked. Emo Chuan nodded again and looked over the people outside the cell. He was not willing to talk about the past and only said, Chu Xiaoyang has mastered the great golden strength palm. If he escapes from prison, perhaps he will harm you. Before he finished speaking, his ears suddenly twitched as he heard a flurry of hurried footsteps. Emperor, this is bad. This is bad. The royal army commander charged into the prison and ran out of the cell in one breath, bowing down to Emo Chuan. Reporting to the emperor, this subordinate has just received news. King Ding Yuan he escaped to the royal study and injured Zhui Feng. He has already escaped and no one knows where he went. He reported while panting. What? His words were like a bomb, causing everyone in the room to be dumbfounded. Emo Chuan was the first to react. He had a calm expression as he grabbed Chen Ning's hand. Without saying a word, he left the prison and ran in the direction of the royal study. The commander of the royal guards and little four hurriedly followed. The emperor doesn't need to be too worried. Zhui Feng is only heavily injured, his life should be fine. The royal army commander added while running. Emo Chuan did not turn around, but his expression was very heavy. With these things happening one after another, he could not imagine what other incredible things Chu Xiaoyang would do next. Immediately send a group of people to guard the peaceful life palace. If you see Chu Xiaoyang, do not show mercy. He ordered in a cold voice. Yes, your majesty. The commander of the imperial guards answered loudly, turned around and ran away. Chen Ning was carried by Emo Chuan as they ran, the wind whistling in her ears. Her heart was in a mess and she could not think clearly. Chu Xiaoyang actually broke out of prison. He even injured Zhui Feng. What did he want to do? Why did he want to break out of prison? If he wanted to kill someone to vent his anger and find Emo Chuan or her for revenge, he would know that Emo Chuan and she were not in the palace right now. Even if he didn't know, the palace was so big, so why did he appear in the royal study? What was his goal? Doubts piled up in her heart one after another. When they arrived at the royal study, they saw a shocking scene. It was even more miserable than the prison. The two doors of the imperial study had already been sent flying, and there was a deep palm print on each door. The palace guards in the courtyard were all sprawled on the ground, and there were quite a few hidden guards who were in charge of keeping watch. Everyone had a painful expression. Some were loudly groaning, some were spitting out blood, and some were unconscious. Among them, Zhui Feng's injuries were the heaviest. He spat out blood from the corner of his mouth as he fell in the center of the royal study. His eyes were closed and he was already unconscious, but his hand was tightly holding onto a wooden box, not willing to let go. The clothes on his body were tattered and there was a blood-red palm print on his chest. It could be imagined just how intense the life-and-death battle he had with Chu Xiaoyang was. Emo Chuan shot over and helped Zhui Feng up. He took his pulse and found that his pulse was still beating, but it was slow at times. It was clear that he had suffered a heavy internal injury. Chapter 1442. When Xiaoru saw this, she was already stunned like a wooden person. Especially when she saw Zhui Feng's miserable state, she couldn't help crying. She couldn't say why she was crying, she just felt sad. She was worried that Zhui Feng would die like this. Yes, young miss. I'll immediately go find the ancient divine doctor. Xiaoru wiped her tears and then quickly ran out. Qinning's eyes flashed. She thought of the mysterious assassin from the Purple Heaven Pavilion and the missing Chu Xiaoyang. She immediately said to an imperial guard beside her, "Immediately bring a group of imperial guards and send Xiaoru away." That imperial guard loudly said, "This subordinate will follow your orders." He picked a group of imperial guards to escort Xiaoru away. Qinning walked beside Emo Chuan and said in a soft voice, "How are Zhui Feng's injuries? As long as he still has a breath left, my master can definitely save him." Emo Chuan's face turned livid as he nodded and said, "He was also hit by Chu Xiaoyang's great golden palm, but his injuries are much heavier than others. Chu Xiaoyang used 120% of his strength when he hit his chest, so his 5 viscera and 6 bowels are all heavily injured. Although I have medicine for the great golden palm, it can only heal his external injuries. As for his internal injuries, I'll need your master to do it." He placed his right palm on Zhui Feng's back and slowly sent a strand of internal energy into his body. After a while, Zhui Feng's body slightly moved and he slowly opened his eyes. His face instantly revealed an excited expression. He struggled to kneel down, but he found that his body had no strength at all. He couldn't even move his pinky finger. "Emperor, this subordinate did not do a good job. I'm sorry, Emperor." The matter the Emperor ordered this subordinate to do, this subordinate couldn't protect the things in the box. King Ding Yuan. He stole it. He spoke in a broken voice. He used all the strength in his body to lift up the wooden box in his hand. The wooden box was completely empty. Emo Chuan and Qinning's hearts trembled. They knew what was inside the wooden box. It was the blueprint for the 20 crossbows. "You're saying that Chu Xiaoyang broke into the royal study and stole the things in the box?" Because he was too shocked and excited, even Emo Chuan found it hard to keep his voice calm. Zhui Feng closed his eyes and forcefully nodded. "It's all because this subordinate is useless. This subordinate did not complete the task the Emperor gave me. Emperor, please heavily punish this subordinate." Zhui Feng was filled with shame and guilt, causing his injuries to worsen. He spat out a large mouthful of blood. Then he fell back and fainted again. The wooden box in his hand fell to the ground with a sound. "Zhui Feng." Qinning was shocked. She quickly placed her hand on his pulse and found that it was still slowly beating. His injuries were too heavy and he was too excited, so he fainted. Emo Chuan's chin tightened and he didn't say a word. He walked in front of the bookshelf where the drawings were placed and used a special technique to push open the secret compartment. The secret compartment opened and there was nothing inside. He feng chen zhe feng and ttt feng chen chen's this. The location of this secret compartment was very secretive. Only a few people in the royal family knew about its mechanism and how to open it. Chu Xiaoyang was one of those people. Chapter 1443. Qinning never would have thought that Chu Xiaoyang would break into the royal study and steal the crossbow blueprints. Xiao Si immediately sent the order. "Have the imperial army and the palace guards leave the palace and seal off the city. Even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground, you have to capture Chu Xiaoyang for me. No matter what, you can't let him leave the city." He loudly ordered. "Yes, Emperor." Xiao Si was prepared to leave when Emo Chuan quickly picked up a pen and wrote down an imperial edict. Emo Chuan could hear that he was full of energy, no longer looking like he was on the verge of imperial edict. At this time, he also felt that the disobey in his body had been used up and he said in a voice filled with killing intent. So he pulled back his palm and threw 2 pills into his mouth. Xiao Si gave a shiver as he cross-legged and closed his eyes. He held the imperial edict and Zhui Feng knew that he was cultivating, so they didn't bother him. The imperial physicians heard the news and slowly closed his eyes and guided the injured people and applied medicine to heal his injuries. All of them were extremely busy. Qinning stood up and walked around the room. Emo Chuan returned to Zhui Feng's side and continued to remembered that Emo Chuan had placed the 20 crossbow because Zhui Feng's injuries were too heavy, but no matter how Zhui Feng couldn't find the last until Gu Qingze arrived. She used her hand to push the bookcase, but there was no movement at all. After sending in his internal energy, Zhui Feng woke up again and slowly opened his eyes. Emo Chuan did not stop. Zhui Feng felt a warm true qi enter his body from his back and spread to his limbs. It made his entire body feel warm and the injury on his chest no longer hurt that much. He was grateful, ashamed, and filled with an indescribable guilt. After struggling a bit, he shouted, "Emperor, you can't. Don't waste any more internal energy for this subordinate. Mo Chuan coldly said, "Shut up." Zhui Feng refused to shut up. He knew how important internal energy was to people who practiced martial arts, and it took a long time to increase it by a bit. If Mo Chuan kept sending in internal energy like this, it would consume a large amount of his true qi. "Emperor, you have a golden jade body, this subordinate?" "How can this subordinate?" He was so excited that his body began to tremble. He wanted to struggle up, but his body was weak and he couldn't move at all. "If you keep talking, be careful that your body explodes and you die." Mo Chuan released internal energy from his palm. Zhui Feng felt an overwhelming amount of internal energy surge out, and he didn't dare say anything else. He could only close his mouth and guide the internal energy into his dantian. He could feel the warm energy in his dantian. He finally realized that although his injuries were heavy, he didn't lose any internal energy. Being stimulated by Mo Chuan's internal energy, it began to flow through his body. "Your Majesty, this subordinate already feels much better. Your Majesty, please don't waste any more energy on this subordinate." Chapter 1444. Mo Chuan, have you rested enough? Qin Ning turned around and saw that Mo Chuan was already standing behind her. His eyes were already filled with energy. Mo Chuan nodded and his right hand reached into the hidden compartment. When he pulled his hand back, there was an extra scroll in his palm. He placed the scroll into his chest and pushed it back into the hidden compartment. The bookcase returned to its original state. Qin Ning saw that he didn't say anything, so she didn't ask what it was. "Young miss, the divine Dr. Gu is here." Xiao Ru's voice came from behind her. She turned around and saw Xiao Ru carrying Gu Qing's medicine box. Her little face was red and there were beads of sweat on her forehead as she ran over while panting. "Zhui Feng. How is Zhui Feng? Is he dead?" Xiao Ru saw Zhui Feng lying on the ground with blood on the corner of his mouth. His face was pale and his eyes were closed, not moving at all. Her heart jumped into her throat and her voice became choked with sobs. "He's not dead, but if you curse him again, perhaps he'll be cursed to death by you." Qin Ning pinched her cheeks and looked at Gu Qingze. She called out, "Master." Gu Qingze had a drowsy look on his face. It was clear that he had been woken up in his sleep and then rushed into the palace, not having time to sit in his chair. He had been in a hurry the entire time and his clothes were not as neat as usual. Seeing this in Qin Ning's eyes, she felt touched. With Gu Qingze's personality, even if the sky fell down he wouldn't care. He hated being woken up when he was sleeping, but when she called him, he immediately rushed over. This kindness, she would firmly remember it in her heart. What happened here? Did an assassin come? Gu Qingze knit his brows and looked at Qin Ning. His eyes were filled with deep concern. "Qin girl, are you injured?" Qin Ning shook her head. "I'm not injured, it's Zhui Feng who is heavily injured." "Zhui Feng?" The concern in Gu Qingze's eyes immediately disappeared and his face became indifferent once again. "That brat won't die," he said in a soft voice. "Divine Dr. Gu, please save him. You have to save him." Xiao Ru anxiously pulled on his sleeve and begged. Her large eyes were filled with tears. She hated Zhui Feng as soon as she saw him, but seeing Zhui Feng lying on the ground, it was unknown if he was dead or alive. Her heart was filled with pain like it was being grabbed by a large invisible hand, making it hard for her to breathe. "Didn't you not like seeing him? Now that he's dead, you'll have peace and quiet. In the future, there will be one less person you hate in this world. Why are you crying?" Xiao Ru was stunned and she looked at Xiao Ru in a daze. Xiao Ru. "I hate Xiao Feng, I hate Ning, I Feng, I Ji." Just a day ago, she had been gnashing her teeth in hatred towards Zhui Feng. Because Zhui Feng had saved her, she had personally embroidered a pouch for him to express her gratitude, but he had mercilessly rejected her. When she thought of this matter, her heart felt like it was being blocked by a large piece of cotton. Whenever Zhui Feng was mentioned, she would feel hatred. She had even sworn that she would never see Zhui Feng again in this life. Chapter 1445. Gu Qingze didn't care about Xiao Ru anymore. He walked over to Zhui Feng's side and took his pulse. Looking at his complexion, his originally indifferent face became even more indifferent. He took out a porcelain bottle from his chest and threw it to Xiao Ru. "Give it to him and he'll be as lively as a dragon in a day." After he said this, he looked over the injured people on the ground. Then he turned around and stared at Qin Ning. "Xin girl, next time if you disturb Master's sweet dreams because of such trifling matters, Master will expel you from the sect." As soon as he said this, he realized something was wrong. He fiercely added, "Expelling you is letting you off too lightly. This Master will punish you to study in the Godly Doctor Valley for another 3 years. If you can't learn medicine, you will never be able to take a single step out of the Godly Doctor Valley." He turned around and walked away without looking back. He didn't even look at the people around him. Qin Ning made a face at his back. She knew that his words and actions meant that the injuries of the people here were not serious and the doctors could deal with them. Moreover, he had left some medicine for Jue Feng. Xiao Ru immediately poured out the medicine from the porcelain bottle and fed it to Jue Feng. When the medicine entered his stomach, Jue Feng felt a warm current enter his chest. It was like a large hot hand was massaging the blood in his chest. It was very comfortable. He was surprised and happy as he quickly circulated his internal energy to spread the medicine, making the effect spread a bit faster. After a while, he suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. He jumped up from the ground and knelt down on one knee in front of Mo Chuan. "Emperor, this subordinate didn't protect you well and lost an important item. I asked the Emperor to punish me." "Jue Feng, you're better?" Xiao Ru called out in a surprised and happy voice. Her face was filled with happiness. Mo Chuan and Qin Ning also had happy expressions. Although they knew that Gu Qing's medical skills were like gods, they never thought that Jue Feng would recover this quickly. Not only were the two of them surprised, even Jue Feng himself felt this was a bit strange. He only felt that after taking the medicine, the qi in his dantian was full and his internal injuries were mostly healed. He tore open his clothes and saw that there was only a faint red mark left on the bright red palm print. He was instantly stunned. "This matter has nothing to do with you. Jue Feng, you don't need to blame yourself. That Chu Xiaoyang has mastered the great golden palm, it's no wonder you aren't his match." Mo Chuan raised his right hand and Jue Feng felt a strong force supporting his elbows. He couldn't help standing up. Looking at Mo Chuan, his heart filled with shock. He already knew that his master's cultivation was deeper than his, but he never thought that it would be stronger than him. But what shocked him even more was the news that Mo Chuan had said. King Feng's palm, King Jue Feng didn't say. "No wonder his palm strike was so strong and fierce that I couldn't even withstand a single strike from him." His martial arts weren't far from Chu Xiaoyang's, but Chu Xiaoyang suddenly appeared and sent a palm at his chest without a word. With his movement technique and reaction speed, he couldn't dodge it in time. It was a good thing that he moved his chest half an inch at the critical moment. But even like this, when that palm hit his chest, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His blood boiled and his vision turned black. Chapter 1446. Thinking about it now, his heart filled with a chill. He was shocked that Chu Xiaoyang's cultivation had improved this much. He couldn't even block a single move from the other side and was heavily injured. Mo Chuan nodded. He told him about how Chu Xiaoyang learned the great strength golden palm in the heavenly prison, how he injured the guards, and how he escaped the heavenly prison. His expression turned serious as he said, "Jue Feng, go and recover first. Come see this one after you've recovered, this one has something to tell you." Jue Feng said without even thinking, "This subordinate's injuries are already fine. If the Emperor has anything to say, just give the order." Mo Chuan shook his head in disapproval. "Are you treating this one's words as passing wind?" Jue Feng did not dare say anything else. He bowed to Mo Chuan and slowly retreated. Then his figure disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. The imperial bodyguard saw that his injury was much heavier than all of them, but in just a short while he seemed to be fine. Moreover, his qigong was still so mysterious and unfathomable that all of them admired him very much. Xiao Ru couldn't help rubbing her eyes. She found that Jue Feng really had disappeared and she pulled on Qin Ning's sleeve. "Young miss, is Jue Feng really healed? He was heavily injured just now, how could he be healed in the blink of an eye?" Qin Ning patted the back of her hand and said with a faint smile, "Speaking of this, he should be thanking you. It's a good thing you invited my master over and gave him a healing elixir. You even personally fed it to him, that's why his injuries healed so quickly." Xiao Ru pouted and said, "How could I dare have him thank me, I just wanted to repay his kindness. He doesn't care about my pouch, but now that I've invited a godly doctor to save his life, it can be considered as me repaying him. From now on, He and I will mind our own business, so I won't use my warm face to stick to his cold butt," Xiao Ru said with a smile. Qin Ning revealed a smile and turned to look at Mo Chuan. "Do you want to visit the Empress Dowager?" she thoughtfully asked. With such a large matter happening in the palace, she believed that at this moment, the news of Chu Xiaoyang escaping from prison might have already reached Empress Dowager Zhou's ears. Even if Mo Chuan did not visit, Empress Dowager Zhou would have sent someone to summon Mo Chuan. As for herself, she didn't want to get involved in this matter. Empress Dowager Zhou didn't like her at all, and perhaps after she found out about this, she would blame it on her for Chu Xiaoyang's escape. She had no interest in taking this blame. Mo Chuan was thinking about this matter. Hearing this, he asked, "Why don't you come with me?" Qin Ning shook her head and said with a smile, "When the Empress Dowager sees me, she might fly into a rage. Do you want me to be scolded by the Empress Dowager?" Mo Qin, Mo Xiao, Mo Chu with the little girl, he, Mo Chuan, you, Mo Qin, Mo I. Alright, you go back to the palace to rest first. I'll be right back after visiting my mother. Qin Ning nodded with a smile. She pulled Xiao Ru's hand and returned to the palace. Mo Chuan went to the Peaceful Life Palace. As Qin Ning expected, Empress Dowager Zhou already knew that Chu Xiaoyang had escaped from prison and injured the guards in the royal study. When she was prepared to send someone to summon Mo Chuan, she heard a palace servant report that the emperor was asking for an audience. Quickly let him in," Empress Dowager Zhou immediately said. Chapter 1447. Su Jin stayed by her side the entire time. She didn't even close her eyes, but she had a happy smile on her face the entire time. She had never seen Empress Dowager Zhou sleep this peacefully before. All of this was because of the ancient divine doctor's elixir. Thank the heavens and earth, bless the Empress Dowager to live 100 years, living a long and healthy life. She knelt on the ground and silently prayed for Empress Dowager Zhou. Empress Dowager Zhou slept for a very long time, not waking up until the next morning. Su Jin did not dare wake Empress Dowager Zhou up and let her continue to sleep. She remembered Gu Qingzi saying that the longer Empress Dowager Zhou slept, the better it would be for her recovery. So Empress Dowager Zhou slept until she naturally woke up. After waking up, she felt full of energy, like the energy she had lost for many years had returned to her body. In the past, when she woke up, her movements were very slow. She needed Su Jin's help to get up slowly. Today, after waking up, she opened her eyes and sat up from the bed effortlessly. This gave Su Jin, who was standing in front of the bed, a big shock. "Empress Dowager, you're up?" Su Jin's mouth turned into a circle as she looked at Empress Dowager Zhou in a daze, wondering if she was seeing an illusion. "I'm up." This sleep was truly comfortable. Ooh, that brat surnamed Gu really does have some skills. Empress Dowager Zhou felt full of energy, never feeling so comfortable before. Her shoulders and back would be sore when she woke up, but she didn't feel any discomfort today. She even pushed away Su Jin's hand that wanted to help her up. She put on her clothes and got off the bed, revealing a faint smile on her lips. "Empress Dowager, you feel very comfortable? Are you not feeling uncomfortable?" Su Jin was more and more surprised, even speaking incoherently. Especially seeing the smile on Empress Dowager Zhou's face when she woke up, her heart was filled with an indescribable feeling. It was unknown how long it had been since she had seen Empress Dowager Zhou's happy smile. "This widow's body feels very comfortable." "That's right, Su Jin, send a decree for this widow. This widow wants to see that ancient divine doctor again and properly reward him," Empress Dowager Zhou said with a smile. After she said this, she looked up at the sky and was stunned. "Su Jin, what time is it now? Wasn't this widow celebrating Zhao Rong's birthday in the Inqing Palace? Why did I come back to the Peaceful Life Palace?" She tried her best to remember, but she only remembered that after she took the medicine, she felt her body become light and she felt her body become warm. It was an indescribable comfortable feeling. Then she leaned back into the chair and fell asleep. How did Ai Jia fall asleep? Quick, let's go to Inqing Palace Hall. I hope we can still make it to the banquet. I also hope that Zhao Rong won't blame Ai Jia. She repeatedly called out, "Su Jin, quickly help Ai Jia change clothes, we're going to Inqing Palace Hall immediately." Su Jin's words and Su Dowager's Jin's, and she smiled. "Su Empress, Su Dowager's birthday banquet is Su Jin time? This means this widow missed Zhao Rong's birthday banquet?" Empress Dowager Zhou was stunned. "Su Jin Su Jin Su Dowager Dao Su." Sigh, why did I sleep for so long? But this sleep was really comfortable, as if all my illnesses were gone. Chapter 1448. Su Jin helped her comb her hair while saying with a smile, "That divine Dr. Gu's medical skills are truly amazing. The Empress Dowager is very spirited right now, it's like she's suddenly become 10 years younger. You lass, you only know how to flatter me with your glib tongue." Empress Dowager Zhou revealed a smile. She looked at her face in the mirror and felt very satisfied. Su Jin said with a smile, "This servant is already an aunt, only the Empress Dowager still calls this servant a servant. If others heard this, wouldn't they laugh at this servant?" Empress Dowager Zhou also smiled. "Even if you're a grandmother in this widow's eyes, you're still the little girl that just entered the palace." The two of them were in a happy mood as they talked and laughed. Empress Dowager Zhou suddenly thought of something and asked, "Little girl Su Jin, after this widow fell asleep yesterday, how was Zhao Rong's birthday banquet? The emperor didn't do anything to disappoint Zhao Rong, right?" What she was worried about the most was that without her here, there would be no one to help Zhao Rong control the situation. She had already planned it all out and had arranged everything properly. She had to let Zhao Rong show off at the birthday banquet and show off. Moreover, she had thought of how to suppress Chen Ning's position as the empress, giving Zhao Rong princess face in front of all the ministers. But no one would have thought that sometimes a man's plans would be surpassed by heaven's plans. She had actually fallen asleep at the birthday banquet and slept for 20 hours. Not only did she miss the birthday banquet, she didn't even know what happened afterwards. Su Jin thought in her heart, "The things that happened after you left yesterday were really hard to explain in a few words." Naturally, she knew what happened afterwards. There was nothing big or small in the palace that could be hidden from the Peaceful Life Palace, not to mention Zhao Rong Princess doing such a shocking thing. Only she didn't have the courage to report this to Empress Dowager Zhou. She was only worried that after Empress Dowager Zhou heard this, she would faint from anger. Wouldn't that be a large crime? "Empress Dowager, this servant doesn't know what happened afterwards. After you fell asleep, this servant came back with you and it seems like nothing happened. Although you weren't here, the emperor was still here. With the emperor in charge, are you worried that something would go wrong?" Su Jin's reply was very smart. When Empress Dowager Zhou heard this, she couldn't help nodding. "And you're right. Even if the emperor doesn't like Zhao Rong, he wouldn't embarrass her in front of Duke Ning and all the ministers. Not to mention she is his cousin and it was her birthday yesterday, so Zhao Rong must be very happy. What time is it now and she hasn't come to the palace to greet this widow yet? It really is a grown girl." Empress Dowager Zhou's chair and gave her a cup of hot tea. Empress Dowager Zhou drank 2 sips and then she felt a little. Empress Zhou Dowager Zhou's Jin. "Su Su of the palace, Su Su, the Su, Su he, Su he, Su." Su Jin did not dare delay and quickly ran out, sending people to summon the Zhao Emperor. Who would have thought that at this time Mo Chuan would already be in front of the Peaceful Life Palace? "Mother." The first thing Mo Chuan did after entering the door was to greet Empress Dowager Zhou. Empress Dowager Zhou sat in the chair with a dark face that almost dripped water. Her eyes stared at Mo Chuan, not saying a word. Chapter 1450. When Su Jin saw that the situation was not good, she quickly signaled the eunuchs and palace maids in the room with her eyes. Everyone understood and quietly left the room. Even Su Jin followed behind everyone and left the room, gently closing the door behind her, leaving only the mother and son pair behind. Although she wanted to know what had happened and whether or not King Ding Yuan had really broken out of prison, she knew the rules of the palace. Things that shouldn't be known by this servant, she couldn't hear a single word and couldn't ask a single word. If she couldn't control her ears and mouth, she wouldn't be able to live long in the palace. In the room, Empress Dowager Zhou had a calm expression as she looked at Mo Chuan without saying a word. Mo Chuan slowly stood up. His tall and straight body was like a bamboo tree. His deep black eyes quietly looked at Empress Dowager Zhou, not avoiding Empress Dowager Zhou's aggressive gaze at all. "Very good, you still know to take the initiative to find this widow?" After a long time, Empress Dowager Zhou finally slapped the table and angrily shouted. The teacup on the table was slapped by her and it shook, falling to the ground. Mo Chuan's right hand reached out and steadily caught the teacup, calmly placing it into Empress Dowager Zhou's hands. "Mother, please have some tea." With such a large matter happening, this widow still has the heart to drink tea? Empress Dowager Zhou angrily said. Her right hand raised and the teacup was thrown out. It was like Mo Chuan was gliding on water. His upper body did not move and his right hand had already caught the teacup. Empress Dowager Zhou was a bit stunned and there was already a teacup in her hand. Looking down, she saw that it was the one she had just thrown out. She was stunned, not knowing if she should be angry or amused. She just stared at Emo Chuan. "Mother, if you don't drink this tea, it'll get cold." Emo Chuan had a calm expression as he spoke in a calm voice. Empress Dowager Zhou brought the teacup to her lips and took a sip. Then she slammed it down on the table and gave a snort. "Good, you've really grown up. You've learned martial arts and even know how to show off in front of your mother." Her voice was filled with ridicule. Emo Chuan bowed and said, "Your son still has to thank mother for her teachings." "Teachings my ass." When Empress Dowager Zhou heard this, she was filled with anger and began to curse. As soon as these words came out, her face turned red and she felt a bit embarrassed. It was a good thing there was no one else in the room, only her and Emo Chuan. She slammed the table and raised her voice as she scolded, "I have never taught you to take things by force, to forget your friends when you see a woman, and to do such despicable things. You still have the nerve to say that it is my teachings? You have lost my face." Emo Chuan said in a deep voice, "What did your son do wrong for mother to scold your son like this?" Emo Chuan said with a deep voice, "What did your son do? Fine, since you're acting dumb in front of me, I'll tell you all the shameless things you've done in the past. You say there are so many women in the world you could have taken a fancy to anyone, but you just had to take a fancy to your niece's wife. There were so many women in the world, you could have married anyone, but you had to forcefully marry King Ding Yuan's princess. King Yuan." She was so angry that her body trembled and her face changed. Emo Chuan had guessed that Empress Dowager Zhou would bring up this matter again, so he was already prepared. He thought that Ning'er was really smart not coming with him, otherwise she would not have been able to escape Empress Dowager Zhou's scolding. Chapter 1451. You didn't do anything wrong? Empress Dowager Zhou stared at him, wishing she could slap her stubborn son a few times. Emo Chuan decisively said, "Your son did not marry King Ding Yuan's princess, but rather the country protecting Shen Fang's eldest daughter, Chen Ning. King Ding Yuan has already been publicly divorced by her. This matter is known to the entire world. Moreover, it happened in front of mother and the civil and military officials. Mother wouldn't forget, right? You're still being unreasonable?" When Empress Dowager Zhou heard this, she was filled with rage. She grabbed the teacup and threw it at Emo Chuan. "Mother, please calm your anger." Emo Chuan reached out and caught the teacup, placing it back into Empress Dowager Zhou's hands. Empress Dowager Zhou looked at the teacup in her hand, not knowing whether to throw it or throw it. She could only heavily place it down on the table and put on a serious expression. "Very good, now you don't even listen to this widow's words. Are you planning on angering this widow to death?" Emo Chuan looked up at Empress Dowager Zhou and suddenly said, "Mother's complexion is very good today. It seems like the ancient divine doctor's medicine really has a miraculous effect." He found that although Empress Dowager Zhou was filled with anger, her eyes were filled with energy. Her face was rosy and her skin had turned from yellow to glossy. His heart was filled with joy and he was filled with gratitude towards Gu Qingze. When Empress Dowager Zhou heard his concerned words, her heart couldn't help softening. She thought that even if this son had 1,000 faults, he was still very filial to her. Not to mention he didn't do anything evil. He was young and had fallen in love with a beautiful girl, wanting to marry her, but the mistake was that this beautiful girl was not someone else, but rather his niece's wife. No matter how long this matter passed, it would always be talked about by others. It would become a stain that he could never wash away. Originally, she could pretend that it was better to avoid trouble and let this matter slowly fade away. But who would have thought that because of this matter, it would cause such a huge uproar? When she heard that Chu Xiaoyang had escaped from prison, her head buzzed. She thought, this is bad, this is bad. This was all his son's fault. It is indeed thanks to Dr. Gu's medicine that I haven't been angered to death by you. Emperor, did you already know that this would happen? That's why you summoned Gu Qingze to the palace to treat me? So it turns out that you had planned this and harbored ulterior motives. She sneered. Emo Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he replied, "Mother, not to mention that the matter with the ancient divine doctor was not arranged by your son. Even if it was planned by your son, it would be for mother's health. It can only be said that your son has good intentions, it can't be said to have any ulterior motives, right?" Empress Dowager Zhou was stunned and couldn't reply. She glared at Emo Chuan and coldly said, "Very good, you've married an eloquent empress. Your other skills haven't improved, but your eloquence has improved." Emo Chuan secretly thought that no matter what he said, his mother would take her anger out on Ning'er. But thinking about it, Empress Dowager Zhou's words did make sense. He couldn't help curling his lips and revealing a faint smile. Empress Dowager Zhou saw the smile on his face and became even angrier. She shouted, "You still have the face to smile. Tell Ai Jia, where did this matter come from? How are you prepared to deal with it?" Mo Chuan deliberately asked, "Your son doesn't know what mother is referring to? You don't know? I don't know why you came to the Peaceful Life Palace? Your son is only worried about mother, so I came to visit mother." Chapter 1452. Mo Chuan knew he couldn't hide it, so he said, "As soon as your son returned to the palace, I received news that Chu Xiaoyang had escaped from prison. Your son was worried that he would harm mother, so I sent the imperial army to protect mother." Hey, you finally told the truth. Tell this widow, why did Chu Xiaoyang escape from prison? Even if he really escaped from the heavenly prison, the one he wanted to harm was not this widow, but rather someone else. Emperor, aren't you protecting the wrong person? Empress Dowager Zhou said with a cold smile. Mo Chuan replied, "Your son has already sent people to lock down the capital. We must capture Chu Xiaoyang. When we capture him, your son will personally interrogate him. Why did he escape from the heavenly prison and why did he injure the palace guards, committing this kind of treacherous crime?" Empress Dowager Zhou forcefully slapped the table and shouted, "You already know the answer. Who with a brain doesn't know why he escaped? Why did he break into the royal study and injure people? Emperor, you're still pretending to be confused in front of this widow. Do you really think this widow is an old fool?" Mo Chuan said in a deep voice, "Your son really doesn't understand. Alright, since you don't understand, this widow will explain it to you. Why did Chu Xiaoyang escape from the heavenly prison? He's coming out to take revenge on you. You stole his beloved woman, you wrongly accused him of stealing, you locked him in the heavenly prison and you want his life. He wasn't made of mud, he was a person. He was wrongly accused by you, how could he not be filled with hatred? How could he not be filled with hatred? Emperor, you have to be careful. Be careful of the head on your neck and be careful of the dragon thrown under your butt." Empress Dowager Zhou said this while rubbing her chest. She felt like there was a large stone pressing down on her chest, making it hard for her to breathe. She had kept these words in her heart for a long time, but she couldn't say them out loud. But now that she said them, she felt even more annoyed. In the end, it was all that girl named Chen Ning's fault. She was the main culprit of all of this. If she didn't exist in this world, none of this would have happened. Mo Chuan looked up and looked right at Empress Dowager Zhou. "Mother, are you blaming your son? Your meaning is that the reason Chu Xiaoyang committed such a heinous crime was all because of your son forcing him? Is it not?" Empress Dowager Zhou sharply asked. Hearing this, Empress Dowager Zhou couldn't help picking up the cane beside her and slamming it at Mo Chuan's back. Hearing this, Empress Dowager Zhou couldn't help picking up the cane beside her and slamming it at Mo Chuan's back. "You have the nerve to say you have a clear conscience. You failed the previous emperor and failed your ancestors. If I die, I won't have the face to see my ancestors in the underworld." Because of her agitation, she began to cough violently. Mo Chuan gently dodged Empress Dowager Zhou's cane. He held the cane in one hand and supported Empress Dowager Zhou with the other. "Mother, please don't be angry. Since mother believes that I was wrong, then what does mother want me to do? Mother, as she wants, your son as you can, son, do anything." Mo said, "Will do what?" I said, "Your son can do whatever mother wants, but your son has a bottom line. As long as mother doesn't touch that bottom line, your son will follow mother's orders." Mo Chuan calmly replied. Empress Dowager Zhou stared at him and didn't say anything for a long time. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.